What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Onyx Report. Hope everybody is well. Yeah. All right. Just checking a few things. Looks like we are good. All right. Yeah, we're good to go. Shout out. See if we got a few people in the building already, which is always good to see. Shout out to AL, Enigma. What's going on? Freddie Wayne. What's up, Brian? Jay Cleveland. What's up, brother Damon? Hope y'all are good. What's up, Donnie? Queen Kalila. MLR. What's going on? High Scholar. What's up, Kay? Yeah, we getting it in. In case you didn't know, right? This is the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. Don't get it twisted. That is all we are about. It is not about denigrating anybody. It is not about attacking people. It really isn't even about entertainment. It's really about getting information out that uplifts Black men and boys. That is principally what we are doing, and what we continue to do. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will. Support the channel of Black male content creators that are looking to bring you content that you're not going to find anywhere else. This is the opportunity we have to build that. It's not really happening on television. It's not really happening on film to any great degree, at least not in terms of mainstream access. It's not happening in too many places, but where it is happening, support it. That's first and foremost. So let's make sure we do that. You can become a supporter of the channel right here on YouTube, become a member. You can join, or you can just, go ahead and contribute a donation and do that on the super chat right here through YouTube. You can also do it through Patreon, where you can become a supporter of either the Onyx Report and or the Institute for Black Male Studies. So consider doing that. But then there's also Cash App, PayPal, and Venmo. So you see it on the screen. Support the channel, as it were. We're not going to take too long. We're going to dive in pretty quickly because, I'm always excited when I get a chance to have my brother on. Haven't had a chance to rap with him in a little bit, but it's up and moving. Shout out to Moonwalker. Appreciate that support. Thank you. So we just, let me go ahead and bring him in. But just to say real quick before I do, we are broadcasting on innerlightradio.com, as well as obviously YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So hopefully you guys are getting it wherever you are. What up, Muada? Good to see you. What's up, Vincent? See a few brothers in here, but let me go ahead and bring my brother in. Y'all are familiar with, and if you're not, this is the G with the PhD, also known as Green Gorilla. What's up, brother?
What's good, man? How are you?
Oh, man, doing good, man. Trying to get these brothers in here to take notes from the Green Gorilla himself. Who's putting it down, man. He's putting it down, and if you're not familiar, you're late. And you can check Green Gorilla both in terms of critical content, but also in terms of music. Because you guys should know my theme song was made by Green Gorilla himself And I've had several people every week asking me where they can get it from and all that good stuff, who made it. So I am reminding you, this is the Green Gorilla. So you've been putting out a lot of musical content too, right?
Just here and there, man. If you guys want to listen to it, you can. If you don't, you don't have to, man. For the most part, I'm just enjoying myself.
That's right.
That's how I look at it.
That's right. That's right.
Because, you can be stressed out all day or you can do something you like to do.
Yeah,
You can be mad at the world all day or you can take time to do the things that you enjoy.
that's right. That's right. And what happens when what you enjoy brings peace to other people, sir? Then what?
That's even greater, man. That's the summum bonum, man, of relationships, man. What you love to do and they enjoy it as well, man. So it's a mutual benefit. You can't beat that.
That's right. And that's why I want y'all to support the Green Gorilla channel, because you're gonna find, as with most of the brothers I support, content that's unique, that you're not gonna hear anywhere else. And I can tell you, running across red pill philosophers in the black community, you ain't finding that on YouTube readily. You're not. This
No,
brother
no.
through
But
thousands.
one thing I want to say about, right now I'm just doing lo-fi hip hop.
Mhm.
It's, a chill kind of vibe.
Right.
But one thing I want guys to be mindful of, man, is, hip hop was something that was created, by black people. Cool Herc, we know the history.
Mhm.
And hip hop has, for the most part, been gentrified.
Mm.
Hip hop didn't start off with cool animations and people chilling in their bedrooms, or in cafes drinking lattes. It didn't start off like that. It started off in, the parks in Bronx. You know what I'm saying? And so it's important for guys to know, man, that if you're gonna listen to Lo-Fi Girl, you definitely got to listen to the Gigi's channel, man. How can you listen to Lo-Fi Girl all day and night and then, have some sort of ire about watching Gigi's Lo-Fi? At least
Right.
I know the origins of it. At least I'm, racially connected to it, culturally connected to it, and have been so, from a very early age. So if it's something you like, man, just visit the channel, man. Sometimes you got to take a load off and, shake the negative energy off. And that's one of the ways to do it, man. They say music has the power to soothe the savage beast, man.
Mm.
And too often the music we listen to is, I love trap music too, but
Mhm.
good God, man. I mean, you can't listen to trap music all day. It'll have you, feeling like you're a don. You need to engage in murderous practices and it's war music actually. That's how I perceive it. It's war music, and even during war, man, you need to sometimes play something soothing, even during war. So anyway, I'm done with that. I'm done.
All right. Shout out to Durante Swing. Appreciate that support. Hope y'all continue to do so. So tonight, now this is something I asked Gigi to join me in because I know he's familiar with it as a professor himself. Who's taught for quite a while. Um, do you remember the first time you ran into this concept of black male privilege?
I say this often. I first encountered the concept of black male privilege on Facebook.
Mm.
And it was because I put a post on Facebook that said something to the effect that, so Bruce Jenner is a beautiful woman, but Serena Williams is an ugly man. I just don't understand it. And, I had pictures of both of them. And then a trans person in the field of philosophy responded to it and said that, the whole post was transphobic. And I told her what I meant by it. And, for the most part, she told me I was privileged.
Right.
you know, and I had already been to prison. I've already been shot at. I've already had guns pulled on me. I've
Right.
already, you know, uh, been in precarious situations, man, all throughout my life. Violence from other men, violence from women, the whole nine. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what is this, man? I don't quite understand it. I can't quite comprehend it and get my head around it or wrap my fingers around it. And so, I came to the conclusion, man, that for a white trans person who for all intents and purposes, man, these people, man, they live a nice middle class, upper middle class life. And I hadn't even finished my PhD at the time. Okay. And just going through struggles, man, financial, I grew up in the hood, man, so hearing that, man, I was just astonished by it. I was like, what, privileged to, get shot and killed?
Right.
Privileged to be incarcerated? Privileged to be constantly surveilled? Like, like I don't understand what the privilege consists of, what it adheres in. I need to hear more about this. And, immediately when I posted, Curry was like, my response is Curry was like, hey, man, you need to say X, Y, and Z. I was like, and then, you came and had some comments and some statements about it. But, it was my first contact with hearing that, I had privilege. And then, you had black women also chime in and a few people. I mean, it wasn't intense, but, some people who were friends of mine who were scholars that were women did chime in. But then there were other women who chimed in and said, it is not okay for a white trans person to start telling you about your privilege. So, shout out to those women who did, who are scholars who did, kind of take pause with the, this approach from this person, you know what I'm saying? So, but this person eventually, grew to win awards in women's cycling.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, man. In my world, and I'm not trying to disparage any group of persons, man. I feel like, okay, this is what you want to do with your life, man. Who am I to tell you what to do? If your thing, if you want to slice it, add to it, whatever it is, it's fine by me. But a white guy who can become a white woman and then use the language of women, or borrow from the oppression of women to make a comment about black men. I was really taken aback by it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was like, really, that was my foray into black male studies, by the way.
That was your
introduction. So it's my introduction into it. It had to be around 2013, 2014, something like that. That had to be around the year that all this transpired. But, man, I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, you go from being a white dude, and all the chaos they cause in the Western Hemisphere. So they can go from being a white man to a white woman, and now I got to talk to him and respect him and approach him like a woman. Man, it just really, really threw me a loop, bro.
Well, shout out to Ghetto User for the support. Says standing with the scholars tonight. Appreciate that. Yeah, man. I'm trying to. I can't remember the very first time I ran into it, but I do remember when I actually looked it up, and I ran across one of the things I'm going to share tonight, and we'll go through together in terms of the checklist. But I wanted to first start by explaining the thumbnail for those who have had a chance to see it before coming in. The thumbnail is based off of something that occurred in 2019. Right? And this is an article that kind of covered it. I don't know. I think you might remember this, Gigi, where this little sign was put on the door at a campus-wide event at American River College. I don't think it was there, but let me see. Flyer posted outside of the Unite office in the Hub ignited controversy among both staff and students and prompted a formal apology from American River College President Thomas Green. The flyer read, "Masculine black men, check your male privilege before entering," was posted without explanation by paid Unite interns after internal dialogues about misogyny, according to Joshua Moon Johnson, Dean of Student Services, Equity Programs, and Pathways. So this sparked a huge conversation, but the concept was hardly new by the time this happened. But this kind of put it into people's awareness right around that time. And these kind of conversations have been going. I've been seeing it among students for some years now, even really technically before the concept. I saw the gestures being made at this, and it really came down to a silencing of black men. But the irony, though, is this would happen at campuses that barely had black men. That was the interesting thing about it. There would barely be black men. If you really want to talk about the institutional exclusion, right? Institutional misandry, the institutional exclusion of black males, you barely would have them at campuses. And these are the kind of arguments that would jump out. And black men are hardly in the majority by any measure. I mean, hell, even at Fresno State, in the 14 odd years that I've been there, the number of black students has dwindled dramatically, but the number of black male students, I mean, it's a small fraction of what it was even when I got there. We're talking about a few hundred at best. And so when this kind of thing happens, it usually comes with a healthy dose of some frustration. But here, I thought you might be interested in this, Gigi. It's the New Black Man in Exile.net. This is a piece from 2010 from Mark Anthony Neal, and he's talking about the myth of black male privilege, right? And so I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but he talks about this concept and the kinds of blowback that it initially got, but of course applauds people who support it. He talks about David Eichert. He talks about R. LaRoe Lewis. And for those that don't know, these are kind of the some of the go-to names in terms of black feminism amongst men. You know what I mean? And so when you find this on campus, these are in the academic space, these are the black males that kind of get called in to champion the idea. So I'll just read this portion here. He says, even the default argument offered by some black men that suggests that black women are more present in the professional workforce doesn't hold up in the Insight Report. Though black women outnumber black men in professional and managerial positions, less than 1% in the latter case, those numbers are undercut by an across-the-board income gap where black women make about 87% of what black men do. But as the Insight Report cautions, earnings are no doubt important for building wealth, but they are converted into wealth at a much faster pace if they're linked with the wealth escalator, fringe benefits, favorable tax codes, and valuable government benefits that are tied to employment, income, and marital status, and women of color do not benefit from the wealth escalator to the same extent as men. Notice he says men. He doesn't actually say black men, but that's the implication. Men or white women, right? Like all men do and white women. As the report explains, women of color experience a pay gap that is affected not just by the pay gap between men and women, but also between whites and minorities. Any thoughts about that, Gigi?
That's the additive concept of intersectionality.
Yeah.
And it's being utilized in a, I wouldn't say insidious, but I mean, in a slight underhanded way. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, it's just like, okay, well, women, suffer from a double jeopardy, and their wealth is compounded, or their lack of wealth is compounded by race as well as their gender, and so they have it twice as bad as black men have it.
Right.
I mean, that's the implication here. Okay, and I just even in light of recent research, this just doesn't hold up. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do theoretically, but it doesn't hold up when you look at the empirical data related to black men and upward mobility. And it doesn't even account for the fact that women typically don't work as many hours as men. They choose different kinds of professions than men. It takes none of this into account. It starts with the data created by, white men and white women to talk about their disparities in income. Okay, without even factoring in, what currently everybody on the internet now knows. I mean, all you got to do is look at a couple of Jordan Peterson videos, Christina Hoff Sommers videos, even Camille Paglia videos. You'll
Right.
see That they continuously talk about how it's kind of a misnomer to say that there's this gigantic wage gap between men and women in general, but specifically amongst black men and women. It just doesn't exist. We're on a downwardly mobile track. Black women are on an upwardly mobile track, or a comparable track to white women.
And in some instances, according to Raj Chetty's work, they're in a superior position, or at least an increasingly superior position to white women on certain tracks, especially in regard to certain types of pay, depending on the industry. But in this, I just want to, for the listeners, right off the bat, before we move on from this, I'm going to respond to some of the things he said in the paragraph that I read, especially in regard to pay. And let's be clear. First and foremost, he's talking about employed black men, right? And we know, we've talked about this on the Onyx Report many a time, that when it comes to pay and when it comes to black men, roughly speaking, black men who are employed make about 69% of white male dollars, black women about 63. But when you factor in incarceration, black men are the only group of men that make less than their women at 51%. And that has to do with what Gigi just pointed out, the types of choices men have been socialized to make, where we prioritize income, even future income when we're in school. We prioritize income over the things we might find enjoyable. I went to school, when I started college, I went to be an artist. That was what I went for, and I changed my major about 7 times and then eventually went into education and Africana studies. But the point is, when you look at the data, and this is something Peterson has been good for talking about, is that men have been socialized to be providers, to think like providers. So we sacrifice the things we enjoy for what tends to pay, and we work jobs that don't have as much emotional fulfillment for the sake of being able to provide. So that said, that's one of the major reasons. The type of industries men choose to go into, the hours worked, those are the two most significant components to this discussion about the gender gap that nobody really wants to talk about. Women generally tend to take employment that's local, or for at the very least, easily accessed, and more than anything else, is not as rare. You know what I mean? Men tend to take chances to a greater degree. They're willing to travel. They're willing to live alone. They're willing to live outside of their social network, and that generates a lot of difference in terms of pay. So I just want to put that up. And so even though there's a gesture at the empirical here, it's I would say it's very cherry picked, and it kind of dodges some of the more central elements to this. And I would also add, and I'm putting this in a weird way, in his defense, this is a 12-year-old piece. So I don't know what he said since about this. This was posted March 30th, 2010. But I just want to put it in context, because these are some of the more popular things I'm going to show you that deal with this question. But I will read the last paragraph, because I think it'd be good to get Gigi's reaction to this too. Gender privilege is no myth, and despite the structural crisis that black men face in American society, they often function with significantly more advantages than black women. The quicker black men come to terms with this reality and let go of their privileged victim status, the quicker black men and women can talk about strategies to increase the wealth and stability of all within our communities. Shout out to MLR for that support. What do you think about that, Gigi?
Yeah, so the structural crisis that they're talking about is premature death, violent deaths, health-related deaths. They don't talk about the homelessness of black men. They don't talk about the incarceration of black men. I mean, what's the advantage that we have over women in a society that, for the most part, targets men, specifically for the most lethal forms of racism? What's privileged about that? Now, I mean, I'll take less money to be less of a target. If that's the argument that's being made, I'll take less money.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I mean, think about it. What would you rather have? Less money and less targeting for lethal violence, or more money and more targeting for lethal violence?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one way to look at it, okay? But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, above and beyond all that, okay? This is a shaming tactic to me. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
this whole idea about gender privilege
It is.
might exist within a white dynamic, but it does not exist within a racial patriarchal dynamic. It's not there. Okay, no matter how much they wish for it to be there, no matter how much they use the heuristic or the comparison between white men and white women and then try to apply it to black men and black women, it's a false equivalency. I mean, there have been scholars who've talked about this. Jim Sedani has talked about the subordinate male target hypothesis with a social dominance theory. Curry has mentioned this. You've mentioned this. Errol Miller mentioned this when he talked about patriarchy and kinship and clan, development within racial hierarchical societies. I mean, like this to me is just a shaming tactic. Like as soon as you learn to wake up and understand how bad black women have it, then all of a sudden things will get better. Because
Exactly.
But there is no evidence that that's the case.
Right.
Well, I mean, even if it was the case that black men were to, become conciliatory to this particular kind of demand, would it change the income of women? Would it change the income of black people together or collectively? Nothing would change.
Right.
Because black men aren't the ones who are employing themselves or black women. It's white people. So it's a statement that really has no bearing on anybody's outcome in the black community.
Right.
So you can tell us to be toady and obsequious to this claim if you want, but I don't see how it would move the needle on black progress. And then furthermore, I just did a show not too long ago. I think I'll do this again. I think it was the racial equality. Let me look this up really quick, just so I don't get it wrong. The downward mobility of black boys. It's Race and Economic Opportunity Project. Okay, and there's extensive data that basically shows that as it pertains to wealth inequality in the black community is pretty much shouldered by black men.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are bearing the load. If it were the case that black men had some kind of parity with white men, then the wealth gap would shrink. Okay? It would narrow. We would be on an upwardly mobile track. But that's not occurring. Okay? And so it's a dynamic. This wealth gap is something that has to do with a particular kind of misandrist racism that's directed towards black men. And as soon as, people like, Ickert, Neal, and I forget the Jewel, as soon as they acknowledge this, we can get on the right track and develop some sort of policy to mitigate this wealth gap. But they don't want to do that because, they're caught into the frame of feminism.
Well, and once you have to use privileged victim status, that already tells me what I need to know. So, black men in their graves are privileged because we know about them, and somehow we don't know about, women. That's the implication, or LGBTs. But what they sidestep in that kind of statement, especially in regard to death, and whether it's police homicide, whether it's intimate partner homicide, the thing about it is black men find themselves on the higher end, especially with police and vigilante homicide, to too great a degree for that to make sense. But shout out to Herbert Harris for the support. Shout out to Great I9. But there's a point that Roaring Sun brought up that I do want to address. He said, can seeking employment be a form of male relationship emotional labor in addition to the financial benefits? Can seeking employment be a form of male relationship emotional labor in addition to the financial benefits? I would argue that it is, because part of how we are reared is to prioritize others over our own individual selves, especially when it comes to family, right? This is why even when dating feminists, marrying feminists, you'll still find that even though she wants to partner, she wants to work, the onus of taking care of family, of prioritizing the well-being of the family still falls to men. right? You guys know what we've talked about this 100 times. Your money is our money, her money is her money. That narrative right there centers men as providers, even if they earn the same amount or she earns more. There's still this understanding, this social expectation that his resources go to the benefit of the family and hers can go wherever the hell she wants to put it. That framework in and of itself kind of tells you that this is a form of emotional labor and material labor that men are expected to provide. But there's a clip that I think would also be interesting. This is actually a gentleman by the name of Theo E.G. Wilson, and he kind of does a bit of a talk about black male privilege as well, or male privilege. And let's see if we can get this up here. So I'm just going to play a clip, and you guys can check it out and see a little bit about how this is. Now, I want you to also pay attention to the audience, right? Who is he talking to? Who is in the room, right? But anyway, here we go. Just a clip. Oh, wait a minute. My bad. I got to do this differently. I already got dinged for this the other day on one of my copyright streams. I'm getting a little better at it. It's just taking me a little more time. So let me do this. That is him there. And I'll go ahead and play the clip.
Plus, heartbreak is just a trauma that our culture doesn't prepare men very well for. When straight men fall in love for the first time, it is usually not with the woman that we will marry. And we are encouraged from every angle to practice sex without our hearts involved. The split continues, and that compartment takes on a life of its own. Well, I didn't realize that this was a gendered privilege. Ladies know that as soon as they act out sexually the same way the men do, the slut shaming is a coming, right? Because they don't have that privilege. And privilege seems to be a hard conversation to have with men. Add race to that equation and prepare for battle. It's hard enough to get white men to acknowledge their privilege. Even with them making up 44 of our 45 presidents. Even with their faces on all the currency and Mount Rushmore on land they're not indigenous to. And even with them making up the majority of CEOs and military high command, they still struggle with this idea that this culture privileges them. Just a 400-year coincidence, y'all keep on winning, right? Okay. So imagine talking privilege with black men. Whew, the historically oppressed do not react well when confronted with their role as oppressors. Okay, brothers got to aggressively clapping their hands like, where's my privilege, bruh? You know what I'm saying? Privilege to be 40% more likely to be killed by the police. Privilege to have 1 in 3 of us incarcerated at some point. Privilege of being racially profiled and followed around stores. Privilege of being guilty until proven innocent like the Central Park 5. I had those exact same questions when I was confronted with the idea. And then a black feminist that I know, she said, Theo, when was the last time you were actually afraid of being sexually assaulted?
I want to stop right there for a minute because that was a long setup. Notice how he went through this long rigmarole about white male privilege, and he identified some very specific frameworks where we can see it. And when he gets to black men, he gives his voice to a black feminist, and her question is about sexual assault. What's your thought about that?
The reality is that a black boy who's 15, between 15 and 18,
yes,
has a higher chance of being sexually assaulted than a white woman who's 45 years old.
Yes, sir.
Those are the facts. And, you know, like when it comes to sexual assault, black men are, I mean, it's just a fact. Black men are more sexually assaulted than black women. If you factor in prison rape and male-on-male rape,
yes.
And not to mention that women also assault men and boys.
Yeah,
I mean, they
made to penetrate. Yeah,
and the funny thing about it is, this all hinges upon, you know, your fear of being sexually assaulted as opposed to whether or not you actually are sexually assaulted as a demographic. I mean, women, have this paranoia about being sexually assaulted. I don't know what it's about. It's not really predicated upon any objective data as much as it is a cultural framework about them being vulnerable to attack from men, in a sexual way. But I mean, that just begs the question, why do they think this way? Why is there, to me, it's a privilege to have everyone worried about you being safe sexually or physically. Whereas you don't have any expectation to be protected physically or sexually as a man, or specifically as a black man. And what a lot of people, miss about Curry's work is that Curry's work actually details the sexual vulnerability of black men and boys.
Right.
That's a cornerstone of his theorizing about the way that racism actually works as it pertains to black men. Like lynching often was attended by sexual violation.
Right.
Sometimes arrests of black men get coupled with sexual violation. Okay, not to mention the demographic who has the earliest sexual debut is not black girls, but it's black boys.
Exactly. And that was one of the things I was just about to mention. I'm glad you caught that. If you check out Dr. Tommy Curry and Ebony Utley's piece, She Touched Me, they actually go through the data before they interview adult black men that suffered from sexual victimization as young boys and men. They also talk about the data and how few report, even in the academy, on the experiences of men and especially black men as sexual victims. Now, I created this sheet here. I've shown it on this show before, the male rape information sheet. If you're interested in this, I can definitely provide this to you. Just let me know. But as a matter of fact, I'll put the link for it in the description. If I fail to do so, remind me. I'll happily do that if I don't remember. But in this sheet, it kind of breaks down some of the information around men, some of which, Green Gorillas just kind of spoke on. But I'll just read the bottom portion and I include citations underneath that so you can find out where all of these quotes are coming from. But at the bottom, it says, when you add up made to penetrate cases, rape by the newer FBI definitions post 2012, and prison sexual assault rape statistics, men, statistically, black men especially, experience rape and sexual violation at much higher rates than women annually. So this notion that men don't have to be afraid, don't have to worry, is highly problematic. And it's not surprising that he's quoting a feminist in this regard, because they're not trained to see male vulnerability. They think of black men the way white women think of white men. You know what I mean? That's part of the problem with this dynamic. And something else Gigi just pointed out that's incredibly important to this discussion. We've had decades of media programming making us sensitive to what even, female victimization, female sexual victimization looks like. We have a frame of reference for that. We've seen Lifetime movies, television shows, documentaries. They've had, school presentations where people will come down and tell us what this looks like. How many of those did you have from when it came to males, when it came to men? The closest I had was when it came to gay men, and they talked about gay men being abused. But there was very little documentation, even in graduate school, around the victimization and sexual victimization of both black boys and men. Very little. So I wanted to be clear when we talk about these kind of things. The assumptions being made in these kind of presentations are that black men enjoy this, this vaunted status where nobody violates them. They're just oblivious to their own privileges that they have, and somehow, when it comes to sexual victimization, when it comes to income, when it comes to all these kind of things, black men enjoy some high level privilege that we haven't quite found yet. And we're supposed to acknowledge this. We're supposed to, clasp our hands. We're supposed to, stand in an apologetic kind of stance and that kind of bullshit. But at the end of the day, this is why I appreciate Dr. Curry's push for empirical data, because we move past feelings, we move past these kind of generic political gestures, and we actually look at the reality of black male life, and that changes the discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what I need to start doing, and it's not going to be popular, but I'm going to start reading feminist papers so you can see how these people think and the origin of their ideas and whether their ideas actually withstand the scrutiny of time and research. And because right now, I can guarantee you, most of the conversations centered around women's vulnerability to sexual assault and dominance, it basically emanates from dominance feminism, which I don't think, quite frankly, is worth the paper a lot of it's printed on. Not to say that there's no value in it at all, okay? But it comes from a specific group of people at a specific point in time. And I think that a lot of women, who are dominant feminists are delusional. They're only attending to, or they are only aware of the ways in which they're vulnerable and not others. And it's politically expedient for them to do this. I mean, they're able to reap rewards professionally and socially from, perpetuating this narrative. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're not the only victims on the planet. Your demographic, especially white women, I'm so tired of hearing white women talk about how vulnerable they are. I'm just tired of it, bro. Not the previous colonizers, not the previous slave owners, staunch supporters of lynching and segregation.
Right.
I mean, these are the women who are talking about how vulnerable they are to sexual assault when, many of their claims resulted in men being hung from trees and having their gonads cut off.
And, women on the planet. Let's be clear. We're talking about the most protected women on the planet. They outlive everybody, statistically speaking. Come on now.
So it behooves me, to speak about it because, look, I'm not saying that white women who've undergone atrocities should not have healing. It's not what I'm making as a claim here. But what I am saying is that to point a finger at every demographic other than your own, and to see everyone else's culpability, but not to see the culpability of your own demographic, is hubris, it's narcissism, and it's delusional. Like, it's as if you can just point at masculinity or men and make any kind of fantastic claim you want, and then you don't even have to prove it.
Right.
You don't have to.
Right.
And if you're going to make a claim that's based on a matter of fact about the world, it's an empirical claim, then you have to go back and revise your views as new data becomes present. And that's just the standard practice in science. If you're operating within a specific paradigm, you have to update your research. In the medical profession, in the hard sciences, if it's chemistry, if it's physics, you have to constantly be reevaluating your prior research based upon new developments within that area of inquiry. Right. They're not doing that. All they're doing is what I consider to be essentialist thinking. Men are essentially a certain kind of way. Women are essentially a certain kind of way and are vulnerable because of these essences, whatever they may be.
Right.
The empirical data is not, favorable to them in the long run. But because there's such an inertia related to their framing, and there's this momentum related to their framing, I don't know what it will take to overcome it. When you got black men, and this is something I also want to make people aware of, right? The person who originally came up with this idea of privilege in the way that it's currently manifested in these woke debates is based on the work of Peggy McIntosh.
Okay.
And, she's a feminist, and she just basically, was taking the graduate seminars with men, and,
You're talking about the Peggy McIntosh, the invisible knapsack?
That lady. Yeah, a personal account of coming to see correspondences through work in women's studies is the article that she wrote that basically talks about all of these privileges that men have. And for the most part, it's primarily a discussion or a phenomenological discourse between white men and white women. Okay? But it's also a conversation about race. But, you know, what I'm tired of white women doing is listening to what black women have to say without taking into account what black men have to say. I'm just sick and tired of that shit. Okay? And they've been using black women as a way to deflect. Kind of like serving as guard dogs or some shit like that, like attack dogs. Like, okay, as soon as a black man says something, you get him in line, honey. You check him, okay? But, I mean, if you look at some of the things the woman says, man, I mean, you know, she went to Wellesley College. There's a white-ass woman that's in fucking Wellesley College, man. Like, it's a fucking Ivy League women's college, man. You understand what I'm saying? Like who? And then you got to take a black man from the ghetto, right? Whether it's Chicago, whether it's St. Louis, whether it's, you know, Flatbush, Brooklyn, New York, or Baltimore. Like, huh, lady? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? These men are going to be like, well, what are you talking about, lady? Many of these boys, man, have been sexually assaulted, but are not in tune to think of themselves as victims. I remember, you know, Jim Jones recently saying his mother used to kiss him in the mouth. You know, like, and you know, Coolio was sexually assaulted. DeRay Davis was sexually assaulted. You know, like how many young boys, you know, get sexually assaulted, and then it turns out to be pathological to others in you know, their later years, based upon their own experiences. You know, because hurt people, right? So I just, you know, I can understand like a white woman having this conversation with a white guy, but I can't understand it actually being played out between black men and black women. Like we're going to have a micro conversation intraracially about a conversation that white women started about their men. It's nonsense to me. Okay, I'm just keeping it a buck here, man. But yeah, let's go keep pushing, man. Let's look at this list, man. I mean, you know, I know you
put a list now because I was gonna play a little more, but a lot of where he's getting this and a lot of where Mark Anthony Neal is getting this is coming from the same place. So we might as well just go to the source and deal with that, right? So hold on, let me make sure. There it is. All right. So this is it. Right. This is it. Dated 2008, the Black Male Privileges Checklist by Jewel Woods. So most of the time, if you hear people bring up black male privilege, if you inquire as to what they're talking about, where they're getting it from, this is where you will eventually be taken to. This is pretty much what everybody uses. I've written a paper in response to this some years ago, but we'll go through it, right? So what does privilege have to do with black men? We understand some kinds of privilege. The privilege to call a black man boy, even if that black man happens to be over 60, the privilege to drive a car and never have to worry that the police will racially profile you, privileges that have nothing to do with what a person has earned, but rather are based entirely on who a person is or what color they are. As African Americans, we have the ability to critique and condemn these types of unearned assets because we recognize that these privileges come largely at our expense. We have also learned from social and political movements that have sought to redress these privileges and academic disciplines that have provided us with the tools to critically examine and explore them. However, there's another type of privilege that has caused untold harm to both black men and women, but has not had the benefit of being challenged by a social and political movement within our community, nor given adequate attention within our own academic community. The privilege I'm referring to is male privilege. Male privilege is more than just a double standard because it is based on attitudes or actions that come at the expense of women. Just as white privilege comes at the expense of African Americans and other people of color, gender double standards come at the expense of women. Given the devastating history of racism in this country, it is understandable that getting black men to identify with the concept of male privilege isn't easy, right? For many black men, the phrase black male privilege seems like an oxymoron, three words that simply do not go together. Now, this is the second time. Shout out to Wrench Turner for that generous contribution. Much appreciated. But this is the second time. We saw this with the video clip from Theo Wilson a second ago, right? where just, black men are just so hard-headed, so unwilling to accept their privilege. It's not that they actually disagree. It's not that there's a critical argument that isn't being addressed when it comes to why black men disagree. It's because they're just too sexist to understand. So this kind of dismissive gesture does not allow for an actual response to be taken seriously, because it's not designed to be a dialogue. It's designed to be something black men just have to quietly accept and go sit in the corner with. But anyway, while it is understandable that black men are hesitant or reluctant to examine the concept of male privilege, the African American community will never be able to overcome the serious issues we face if we as black men do not confront our role in promoting and sustaining male supremacist attitudes and actions. Inviting black men and boys into a conversation about male privilege does not deny centuries of discrimination or the burden of racism that we continue to suffer from today. As long as a black man can be tasered 9 times in 14 minutes, shot at 50 times on the morning of his wedding night, or receive less callbacks for a job than a white man with a felony record, we know that racist sexism that targets black men is alive and kicking, right? Examining black male privileges offers black men and boys an opportunity to go beyond old arguments of personal responsibility or blaming the man to gain a deeper level of insight into how issues of class and race are influenced by gender. Gender is one of the most important tools in the production and reproduction of power because it relies on consent and not just coercion. Now, let me say, this is also pre Man Not. This is before Tommy Curry's The Man Not. So I'm not saying that he wrote that The Man Not was written just in response to this by any measure, but it was written before we had a language to really kind of codify our responses. So be mindful of that. And if you've read The Man Not, you have a far better way of responding to this, other than just, disgust. But anyway, the item represented on the black male privileges checklist reflect aspects of black men's lives that we take for granted, which appear to be double standards, but in fact are male privileges that come at the expense of women. I offer the checklist based on years of experience working with men, and with the faith that we men have have far more to gain that we have to lose by challenging the privileges that we take for granted. Now, this is a if I remember correctly, Jewel Woods is a therapist, and so he's talking about this as a therapeutic practice to get individual men to ponder on their individual lives, and this is being promoted as a widespread idea that black men as a collective have to receive and meditate on. There is no comparable list for women about what they contribute, because the underlying idea is that they don't contribute anything. This goes back to what Gigi talked about a little earlier. This is an intersectionalist feminist kind of argument. This is intersectionality in form. This is the internalization of intersectionality by men, right? And so with that, women don't have to be accountable. Everything in terms of intersectionality points to what others do to women. Women don't have to be accountable, but strangely enough, black men do. And we somehow, this kind of approach makes black men exactly what that phrase was a couple of years ago that came out. We're framed as the white men of black people based on how intersectionality interprets black maleness. Right?
Yeah, correct. And another thing I wanted to say about what you said further back when you were reading, that this is consensual, it's not coerced, that like these sort of privileges that men enjoy and the oppression that women suffer from is something that they do so by their own consent. That's an articulation of hegemonic masculinity. Mm-hmm. Just in case y'all didn't know. It just screamed hegemonic masculinity to me. But yeah, go ahead, go on.
It very much does. I'm skipping ahead a little because I do want to get to this list, and I just want to get past some of the jargon. But Black Male Privilege Checklist was born out of years of organizing men's groups and the numerous, often heated conversations I have had with men while utilizing Barry Douche's, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but if I mispronounce it, it's not on purpose, the Male Privilege Checklist. So he's pulling this from a generic male privilege checklist and applying it to black men. Says, in my experiences, most men would object to at least some items on the male privilege checklist. However, men of color, and especially African-American men, often had the sharpest criticisms of the male privilege checklist and the most problems relating to the idea of male privilege. So the underlying idea here is because black men had the biggest problem with the document. We're therefore the most sexist. We're therefore the most misogynist, and we're the ones that the most amount of work needs to be done to rehabilitate because we won't accept it. Right? That's the underlying tone to what a lot of this is dealing with. So I'm going to skip through. There's a lot of jargon. I will, you know what? As a matter of fact, here I'll put the link. I'm going to put it in the description as well, but I'll put the link in the chat for those of you that want to go through a little bit. So anyway, so the black male privileges checklist, and this is within the context of leadership and politics, right? So I'll read a few of these. Gigi, stop me at any time if you want to address some of this. So I don't have to choose my race over my sex in political matters.
Stop. Well, the reason I say stop there is because primarily black men don't choose their sex in political matters at all.
Okay.
I mean, they're beginning to push back. And this is why, there are these counterclaims of misogyny and danger and radicalness being performed by men in spaces such as these. But ultimately, black men have never sat back and taken the time to think about how their gender plays into their own racial position and how they, actually fall in the dominance hierarchy. They never sit and take the time to think that maybe their gender puts them at a disadvantage, right, in a racial way that they hadn't foreseen. And, I think that's the power of a person like Sedanius, the power of a person like Curry, and the power of a person like Errol Miller, right? To talk about how, racial and gender dynamics play out for men, not just for women using a feminist framework, but using a larger framework, right? And a discussion of the way political power is actually meted out in not only Western culture, but all over the world, right? So that's why I just wanted to stop you there.
Well, and I would say this, especially in the left, and I think this is one of the things we're seeing in the last couple of years, men are actually having to deal with, on one level or another, race versus sex. It's just black men in particular, have not voiced it in that way. But the degree to which black men are abstaining from voting or even experimenting with voting conservative, voting on the right, has a lot to do with this. Because when you look at the policies in the black male political checklist, right, the list we've been developing, over this last couple of years here at the Onyx Report, many of the policies that we're proposing through that checklist actually deal with the extent to which black men have been, kind of sidelined and underdeveloped by policy. But we just never regarded it as a gender set of policy. We never regarded it as a gender experience in response to these policies. And it's something that we are slow to dealing with. This is why for the last year, I've been saying, when you actually interview black men politically, and we see this happen, every time there's a presidential bid, eventually they come to the black community. And then even later, they decide to ask black men. They always have some generic barbershop bullshit where the politician will come sit in the barbershop. It's fake barbershop. And then they'll have, black men come up and ask questions and so on and so forth. And they want to know, what is it black men want? What you hear black men say more often than not is genderless. Most black men don't articulate a gender platform, even if we need to. We don't know how. We have not been trained to. So most black men give generic pro-black or generic arguments that are designed to improve the black community as a whole. That's usually what you get. Whereas if you sit down with even an untrained woman who's not necessarily a feminist, or you do actually sit down with a feminist, they will have suggestions about how to improve the quality of life for black women and girls. They're very specific. Black men don't generally know how to be that specific in advocacy for our own gender experience. So, but I do think it's happening. This is why I talk about the black masculinist turn. This is why I'm saying that there are these moments that are occurring where black men are really being forced to think about gender because they're not represented, right? We can talk about, say, police homicide for the last few years. We can talk about the rise of BLM and other such grassroots, but what policies have come out to stem the tide of black male death at the hands of police or vigilantes?
Yeah, so, it's a loaded question. There's a lot implicit within it. And ultimately, you know, our sex and our gender is not disclosed in our racial conversations. And I'm talking about black men, okay? And some go so far as to say that the discussion about the ways in which gender and race cross, you know, or so-called intersect for black men, it becomes a privilege for us to even have a conversation about it and to, you know, kind of skip over what women go through, right? And look, all I can tell you is there have been people who, you know, basically claim that, you know, they're rendered invisible by, you know, the inflated claims that black men are making related to their own experiences and the things that they go through. And you did a show about this the other day when you said, you know, death and dating. I don't know what it was, the name of the show, but it's like, okay, we're dying here, miss. I know you're not like the most visible group, okay? But we're getting killed at 20 times the rate that you are, okay? I'm sorry, but like if the death attenuates with us, it will diminish for you as well, right? And right now we're even beginning to learn. So, you know, the same thing applies to economics. Maybe if you enhance the quality of black men's career trajectories and their ability to accumulate wealth, then maybe that will have a net positive gain for all of black folks, women included, children included, okay? But to have that conversation is to sidestep or to, you know, kind of walk around the feminist framework. And that, of course, is a no-no because they are truth tellers. They have knowledge that we don't have. They have a means or a standpoint, a means of obtaining knowledge that we don't have and we can't see because of the privileges that we're supposed to be able to enjoy, which, it doesn't result in our well-being. One of the things that, you know, smacks me as off-putting about all of this is people who are privileged generally tend to have some sort of net gain that they can demonstrate and show. Okay, look, here's how this is contributing towards my amelioration as a human being. Right? This is contributing towards my ability to function, flourish, and thrive. But it's not.
Right.
None of the so-called privileges we enjoy are contributing towards our ability to function, flourish, and thrive in this culture. And to me, privilege should innately, you know, enable you to function and to flourish. But it's not in our case. Some privileges these are. I mean, I'd rather get rid of them. To be quite honest, fuck these privileges.
Okay. Well, and just for people to know, the video you're referencing was called "We Die, but they can't date." You know, and it had to do with, and I've seen this for years, articles written about how difficult the dating market is due to incarceration, due to death, due to whatever. When you stand back and look at it, it's like, well, shit, we're dying, and the only thing you guys can talk about is how much difficult this makes it for her to date. Isn't there something just off about that? But it speaks to a larger dismissal of the humanity of black men. And I would argue that even though this checklist that he's talking about is an attempt for black men to develop some accountability and so on and so forth, I get that as a gesture one does in therapy or whatever. But I think I think the tone is always the tone of it has always been off to me. But I'll continue here. So number 2, when I read African American history textbooks, I will learn mainly about black men. When I learn about the civil rights movement and the Black Power movements, most of the leaders that I will learn about will be black men. Let me ask you something, Gigi. As a scholar, how many publishing companies have you worked with that were black owned?
I haven't worked with any of them personally.
Okay, I was just curious. Oh, you know.
I haven't worked with any of them, but look, even this to me is a bit insincere. Like, first of all, like if you go to a primarily white institution, where do you learn about civil rights and the Black Power movements at all anyway? Like where do you learn that? Unless you take an elective course and that's part of the curriculum. But like, you know, I've been to a white high school, went to a black college, and of course, you know, we had, you know, African American studies offered there. But I mean, I've taken history in general, and we didn't learn about Black history even at all black college, bro.
Wow.
And I mean, we learned about come on, man, who doesn't know who Fannie Lou Hamer is, bro? Like, who doesn't know who?
Uh-oh. We lost you, Gigi. Yeah. I can see the sound bar moving, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, for some reason. Can you hear me now?
It's got a lot of.
It's gonna come back. It'll come back with time. For some reason, you know, this program just wants to shut off every now and then. I don't know why.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Am I better now?
It's clear. Go ahead.
Okay, so who doesn't know who Fannie Lou Hamer is, bro?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't know who, you know, Anna Julia Cooper is, man? I mean, especially if you're educated, right? Who doesn't know who Ida B. Wells is? Who doesn't know who Ella Baker is, bro?
Well, let me put some of that in context too. Most people, the average person, and I'm saying this in terms of the average student walking in my classroom, don't really know who we think we know, right? When you ask about Martin Luther King, they can tell you about the general tone of the I Have a Dream speech. It doesn't mean they know who King is. Most of them have never heard of, you know, his lecture on why he opposed the war in Vietnam or anything else. From his childhood to his death, what most people think they know is about a portion of a speech. It's really, if you really get down to it, it's not even a paragraph. It's really a couple of sentences at best. So even the things that people seem to think they know isn't realistic. It's not what they know. But this is a gesture in and of itself that deflects the conversation from something more critical, in my opinion. But we'll get to that. So, is there anything else you want me to say before I get back to this?
Just get rid of the whole section and then we can comment on it because this will take forever. But let's. I mean, I'm good. I'll stay forever and talk about it. It ain't like I'm trying to jet, but yeah.
No, I mean, we can get through it. I can rely on the fact that in the near 100-year history of national civil rights organizations such as the NAACP and the Urban League, virtually all of the executive directors have been male. I will be taken more seriously as a political leader than Black women.
I guess that was the case. And I don't know when this guy wrote this, but
this is 2008.
I mean, hell, man, like you got women in politics now, Black women in politics more so than Black men.
When you factor in, and shout out to LaKenzie, shout out to Kevin, and shout out to Kente for the Cash Apps. When you factor in the role education plays in electoral politics, for the last 15 years, Black women have been more primed to go into politics than Black men. And we're seeing those numbers bear out. But most of us don't know what we're looking at. And I've written on this as well. The data is actually, you know, very ensconced. But he's referring to the 70s. He's referring to an earlier time period where you didn't see as many women in politics in general. How much of that was Black men's fault is an interesting thing to reflect upon. But, you know, if you look at it now and you look at what's going on, this has been primed for quite a while. Going back to high school graduation rates, where, you know, the only reason men are getting higher graduation rates, it's only to the extent that includes GEDs. It's not actual diplomas, and it doesn't lend itself to college education or eventually electoral representation. So this is what I meant by the tone of this is off. It's based on feelings. It's based on assumptions that we've heard for years, not actually based on what's going on the ground, right?
Yeah, I mean, specifically now. I mean, this won't age well. I don't think it's going to age very well because it's a snapshot in time based upon the 60s and the 70s, right? So Black men are no longer considered to be leaders of the community. And if you try to be a leader in the community at the current moment, you're going to be perceived as sexist. Or even if you try to step in and do something on behalf of all Black people, you'll get resistance. And then you'll be told that you're not actually paying attention to the special needs of women and, gay folk. I mean, this is how this is playing out now. You know, like I'm thinking about Ice Cube, right? and his plan for Black America, and how he went on Fox Soul, and then the women there were like, well, no, we're not just black people. We're black women, and we have special needs, right? And the question is, do black men have any special needs? We've had special needs all along, and the special needs have never been attended to. And now everybody else is using this like feminist heuristic in order to advance their needs. Well, black women are using it. Male feminists are using it in order to curry favor and to grandstand in the virtue signal. But at the same time, the racial problems of black men are getting worse.
Yeah.
Okay, they're getting worse. Okay, and it's happening at black men's expense because we have a narrative now that tells black men, be quiet, check your privilege. So you can't even really talk about the shit you need to talk about because even to say it is to overlook or to render women invisible.
Right.
So now we're at an impasse. I just think this is
a silencing gesture in and of itself. That's what I think it's actually designed for. But go ahead.
Yeah, like just be quiet and let women lead. Let black women lead. They'll do a better job, right? And like if Black Lives Matter is any indication that this whole fucking exercise is absolutely nonsensical, right? If it's not an indication that it is, I don't know what will be. And I've not heard anything from the black male feminists or feminists in general about this shit. I haven't heard them say anything. Mum's the word with this shit, okay? You got a group of queer women who started an organization who basically pilfered the public's pockets. I mean, they actually grifted money and bought mansions and shit. And niggas still dying, bro. They cast out and decide to, take on corporate careers and shit like that. And if that's the kind of leadership that this kind of politics results in, it's a bankrupt politics, man. And not to say that black women are bankrupt qua being black women. That's not but black women who have this mindset, like, okay, we're gonna look after our interests and our needs first. That's just not gonna be. It's not gonna work in the long run, especially with what black men are dealing with. It ain't gonna work for me.
Well, here, just real quick on BLM, I will offer this, because I've heard somebody say, well, why are you just talking about BLM? You're just talking about 3 women, and no. What we're talking about is how this was able to stand, and even when it was at its inception, when they were telling people after the death of Michael Brown that black men couldn't hold leadership positions in the organization, right? When you were hearing this rhetoric that was coming out, even post 2015. How many people opposed it? Most particularly black feminists, black women in general. How many actually called them out for that type of treatment of black men, let alone by the time we started hearing about disappearing funds? How many? I mean, what kinds of protests did we see from within the black community toward BLM about their treatment of black men? When did we see it? Because I have.
Yeah, bro. I didn't mean to cut you off, bro, but like at some point, man, this shaming tactic has to stop, right? And black men have to say to themselves, look, I don't care if women are offended by this shit, like that we have to say. Like, I don't care. Because it's led to an imbalance, based upon concepts developed by white women and white dudes, who basically a white dude can give lip service to having, the need to check himself and to check his privilege. But a black man, like, look, I understand women have a rough go, okay? Okay, sorry. But like, it ain't just Black Lives Matter, man. It's resulting in black men having a rough time in education. It's resulting in black men having a rough time in familial arrangements or like relationships and co-parenting. A lot of negative effects are resulting or ensuing from this political way of thinking, right? Of men having to check themselves. And for the most part, black men have checked themselves, okay? They've checked themselves out of the political equation.
Well, they have checked themselves out of the political equation, but part of that is we've had a culture of holding black men accountable. There's not been a time period in my lifetime where I haven't known black men to be held accountable. How often has that been the case for black women? When has there been a communal accountability case put to black women? I mean, tell me when that's happened. What have you seen? I mean, I haven't seen it.
Bro, it hasn't happened. And it ain't, unless, men step up, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
But holding, women accountable now is tantamount to just being a misogynist.
Exactly.
That cheapens what misogyny actually means,
right.
as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if everything is misogyny, right. If everything can be defined under the rubric of misogyny, then there is nothing beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
There can't be. So then it becomes useless as a means by which to define anything that men are doing. Mm-hmm. Even things that are so-called harmful to women, because everything is harmful to women. Okay, like at some point it has to stop. But keep going on, bro. I'm sorry, man.
No problem. Let me see where I left off here.
I would be taken more seriously.
Despite the substantial role that black women played in the civil rights movement or black power movement, currently there's no black female that is considered a race leader.
Who's considered a race leader now?
I don't know, but even like, okay, so we're not even going to talk about the sister that ran the Black Panther Party. It didn't exist. All right,
like Kathleen Brown, Elaine Brown, Kathleen Cleaver,
right?
Like they didn't exist. I mean, they literally had like hierarchical, high tier positions within the Black Panther Party. It was a paramilitary organization. She ran the shit. She even talks about, I wish you had that clip where she talks about how, all this shit about the Black Panther Party being sexist and nobody acknowledging the leadership of women is just nonsense.
Yeah. But let me continue. So I can live my life without ever having to read black feminist authors or knowing about black women's history or black women's issues. First of all, starting back in 1992, it was required reading. And not just in Africana Studies classes. It was required reading in classes that had nothing to do with Africana Studies, as long as you had either feminists that would nod to Black feminism or Black feminist teachers. So yes, from undergrad to my master's degree to my doctorate, this was required reading. And even by the time my son was in school, K through 12, there were elements of this, of course, not on the college level, not collegiate level reading, but there were elements of this type of reading for K through 12 that were standard reading. So anyway, I can be a part of a black liberation organization like the Black Panther Party, where an out rapist Eldridge Cleaver can assume leadership position.
Man, come on, bro. Like, even
that's so disingenuous.
Well, put it this way, man. You got a lot of weirdo and a lot of basically some rapey and creepy women, that are the head of organizations as well, man. Like, even recently, like with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard thing, I know it ain't talking about black folks, but, here's a woman, man, that basically was on tour talking about violence against women, and she's throwing, bottles at Johnny and shit, cutting his fingertips off. But she gets to talk about how she was abused, and everyone believes her. Like, that's, man, this shit is crazy. But go ahead, bro.
Oh man, okay. Hold on. I will make more money than black women at equal levels of education and occupation. Wow. We talked about that earlier. Most of the national opinion framers in Black America, including talk show hosts and politicians, are men.
Not true anymore.
Beauty. I have the ability to define black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. In comparison, black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin tone, hair, or body size. Are you serious?
Bullshit.
I just posted on this earlier today, and you know what? I will share this one because this actually came, I've seen it on Twitter. A couple of people have sent it to me, and then I saw it again through BGS's community tab. And so it came from, hold on. Damn it. Where did it go? I just had it here a second ago. Go ahead. Let me find this real quick. What were you gonna say?
We all know, like, I don't know what black women are into now, but I know when I was coming up, it was all about the light-skinned dude. If that ain't black men being subjected to a European standard of beauty, in relation to skin tone, I don't know what is. And we already know about good hair and bad hair and how women love good hair. Ooh, he got some good hair. I mean, what is that? That's a European standard, ain't it? Body size, like any man will do, like an overweight man will do, a short man will do. I mean, come on, man. Like, this is just going off what? Stereotypes and cliches.
And that's something I experienced the same thing, especially, from childhood onward. As a dark-skinned man, I've heard that my whole life, so that ain't new. But one thing's, so the tweet I was referring to was talking about, black women on Twitter and how they were supporting this woman who got complimented by a white man for her hair, and she was excited about it, and the women were all co-signing it, and a guy wrote in, he said, a white man compliments her hair and gets viral tweets of appreciation. But when one of you do the same, we get think pieces on how we don't own black women's bodies. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The hostility extended to men. And I've seen this for the last 20 years in the academy. As student, as administrator, as faculty, I have seen it being targeted at black men who are either trying to have a conversation or hell, even compliment women on the very affirming natural hair, affirming darker skin. I've seen them get blowed out of the water, being argued with about this very thing, even when trying to affirm it. But I've also seen women describe men as being less than desirable based on height, based on skin color, based on hair texture. Yes, black men do talk about those things, and we talk about those things in my classes where black men openly talk about how they're treated. So this is bullshit. These things it never ended. They still continue to pervade how we live and how we define ourselves aesthetically in many situations. But number 12, I do not have to worry about the daily hassles of having my hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way black women do. First of all, and I wrote a piece on my blog about this very thing when a feminist came to my campus and gave a lecture about how only black women deal with hair discrimination. And I provided documentation that, hell, going back to the 60s, black men have had to sue police departments, sue the military over things like beards, hair length. And even to this day, I've witnessed in the last decade, young brother after young brother not allowed to participate in his graduation ceremony or even give his commencement speech as valedictorian because he had locks. One instance because he had beard, he had a goatee. Right? These are not things that black men are excused from. We just don't consider it hair discrimination when it happens. As one feminist said to me, that's just that black male shit. Right? It's not that black men get raped. It's not that they're discriminated against because of their hair. It's not because it's just that black male shit. In other words, it's a way of dismissing how black men's experiences actually tie into the issues we deem important on gender terms. Right? It's a way of dismissing it from that context and putting it in an irrelevant space that has no connection to anything we regard as important. But anyway, I do not have to worry about the daily hassles of having my hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way black women do. I don't have to worry about the daily hassles of being terrorized by the fear of gaining weight. In fact, in many instances, bigger is better for my sex. What in the fuck are you talking about?
Hey, bro, like the real deal, man, is black women don't give a fuck about their weight. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just keeping it 100, man. I'm not trying to be ignorant by saying this. Like, the female population of black women, they're overweight, bro. It is what it is. Like, I mean, you can look at the data on this shit. Like, black women are overweight. I'm pretty sure black men are overweight as well. Yeah. But we're overweight, and it's our diet, man. 80%. It's our diet and our lifestyle. Okay.
80% of black women are overweight, 80% of that are obese. But you tell me, when is the last time you saw an overweight black man being sought after who wasn't a celebrity or a millionaire? When's the last time you seen an overweight average black man on the magazine of anything being lauded for his attractability? I mean, you tell me. I ain't seen it, but you tell me.
What's that dude name? Keenan? Saturday Night Live. I mean, I don't see women putting up pictures of him like, ooh, he's a heartthrob. They got the Idris Elba dude up there, you know. They got Bojo, or whatever his name is, Boris
Kojo.
Kojo, yeah, that cat or whatever, man. Look, man, black men are under the female gaze as well. It ain't just one way. It's a two-way thing, bro.
Well,
it ain't just a one-way thing.
But when we talk about body positivity, how often are men included in that dynamic? When have we seen body positivity applied to men, especially where women have gone out their way to point out how attracted they are to overweight men, short men? You know, when have we seen that?
It's just a woman thing, man, I guess. Only women have to worry about their appearances and shit like that, I guess. I don't know. Actually, I do know, but do women, come under scrutiny in relation to their looks? Do looks make women fare better in society? Yes, but the same goes for men as well. The better men look and, meet up to a specific cultural standard or meet a cultural aesthetic, they reap benefits for that. I mean, it works for both sexes, okay? It's not just something that black women are subjected to. Now, this thing about hair, I just think black women need to let it go, man. Like, this weave shit has gotten out of hand, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I mean, even in the day, I know women, used to perm their hair, but the shit looks somewhat natural. This shit here, man, is like a whole new wave. It's a whole new vibe. And I really can't put my finger on it. I think we look like the laughing stock of the world. We don't look natural. We look like, look, I hate to say this shit, but like black women are beginning to look like trans men. Trans women. There's no differentiation and shit. They started to look like trans women.
Yeah, the aesthetic is very trans oriented. You're right. Yeah.
I'm just keeping it. I'm keeping it real here, man. Yeah. The shit, like, if everything is fake, if the breasts are fake, the ass is fake, the hair is the hair, the ass, the eyelash, everything is fake. Mm-hmm. I thought black was beautiful. That's the shit that was being said in the 70s. Now it's just like, you can fix yourself, you can modify yourself. So it's all about body modification. And men are subjected to this shit too. You think men ain't getting their bodies modified?
Oh yeah. I've seen.
I just saw some.
Get fake abs been put in. I never heard of that before recently.
I couldn't be me, but I've guys the male Brazilian butt lift. Now I saw some cat. I forget what his name was, but it was going around the YouTube circuit where this guy got liposuction and had the fat transferred to his buttocks, shit like that. So,
well, and then we've also seen men injecting their muscles with substances to look muscular. I mean, that's been something in the last couple decades I've been seeing as well. That it definitely exists, and it's definitely in response to the female gaze. But at the end of the day, in terms of this specific question about weight, no. I mean, and this is important because as we've seen this body positivity movement gain momentum, it has been very particular to women. It has ignored men for the most part. And when men have tried to participate in it, it's not been taken seriously to any great degree. Right. Number 14, my looks will not be the central standard by which my worth is valued by members of the opposite sex. Okay. To the point that is debatable, one of the questions that I've seen in the last 40 years men raise is the extent to which they're objectified in regard to income, right? And this goes back to the whole question of sexual marketplace value. If men do value beauty, And women do value resources, which is something we kind of get from the book Dataclysms that covers over 1 million couplings in OK Cupid. We're looking at overarching patterns in terms of how human beings behave. It does seem to be the case that one of the things that women are drawn to in regard to men is status and resources. So if that's the case, if we're looking at the ways, so we have to, in other words, we have to specify how this is drawn out. The way he's asking the question is, to say that men don't have to suffer the way women do because of what men want. But he's not asking the question how men suffer on their own. Are men suffering in relation to what women want? And if women want resources, how does that affect things? Well, one of the things we know, especially online, is the extent to which women have advocated since the 1980s for men with six-figure incomes. But across America, across race, that's less than 10% of the population. How is that not being scrutinized by the opposite sex based on their values? Right? This is one of the things that I think he's overlooking. It's a disingenuous question that's designed to make women feel better, to give us to lean in on the feminist argument of things, but it does not actually take into account men's experiences. And that's what's disingenuous about this checklist. He's not dealing with men's experiences. He's advocating for Black feminism via a critique of Black men, but he's not actually looking at what Black men go through.
Yeah, that's a problem. And men's looks matter, and it's one of the standards by which their worth is valued. I mean, like there are no Black incels. Like they don't exist. Like, there aren't issues or problems related to Black men in dating. Even like when you have wealthy men, they're considered to be, or like educated men, they're considered to be educated lames. They don't have the street aesthetic, So, I mean, the knife cuts both ways, man, or the sword cuts both ways. So,
yeah. Okay, so moving on to sex and sexuality. I can purchase pornography that typically shows men defile women by the common practice of the money shot. Good Lord.
What you mean, the face shot? That's what it is?
That's the face shot, yeah.
The facial?
Yeah, the facial.
Okay, well.
Any thoughts about
it? I don't know why it's considered to be defiling, but I mean, okay, well.
I don't know why it's a privilege either, but
okay, well. To be able to purchase pornography. I mean, I've seen pornos where women shit on men.
Yes, sir.
I've seen pornos where women piss on men.
Yes, sir.
I've seen pornos where women fart in men's faces and, sit on their faces. I mean, like this, like, dude, this, again, the sword cuts both ways, bro.
And that's available for sale, is it not, sir?
It's available for sale, but it's also available for free on Pornhub.com. We're not getting paid to advertise that.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I mean, go look at ass worship or something like that. You'll see a woman sitting on a man's face so where he can't breathe and shit like that. Like, I mean, come on, bro. I mean, it's out there. I mean, am I lying?
Not at all. Not at all.
The shit is out there, bro.
He says, number 16, I can believe that causing pain during sex is connected with a woman's pleasure without ever asking her. Good Lord, man.
Like, I mean, come on, bro. Like man, hey.
You go to jail with that.
Pain during sex, like, I mean, in what way? Like having a big old penis or something like that, you just sticking the 12 inches in her or something like what? Like, what is this, man?
He's talking about pulling hair and smacking and hitting, whatever generates pain, right? The idea is that men can engage in it and somehow, don't even have to ask because we assume she likes pain. You know what I mean? So that's where I think he's going with this, which is really an interesting argument. I don't know why this is exactly a privilege, but okay. I have the privilege of not wanting to be a virgin. What? But preferring that my wife or significant other be a virgin. I have the privilege of not wanting to be a virgin, but preferring that my wife or significant other be a virgin.
Bruh, we just don't want the woman to have like if you standing next to your lady, man, you know, you call it privilege if you want to, man, but like nobody wants, you know, a wife that just puts out for everybody, bro.
But here, look, I've dealt with this issue in my black male studies classes, and one brother I had one year was a brother in the military who got up and we were talking about this issue of sexual expectations of men and women. And when we got to the sexual expectations of men, because we spent time talking about women, and the women in the class had a field day, kind of going through that. When we got to the sexual expectations of men, one of the brothers stood up and said that he was a virgin and how he was saving himself for marriage. Do you know those women tried to laugh him out of that room? Now I bring that up to say, not as if those 10 women were a reflection of all women, but simply to say the perception of men being virgins is not highly sought after outside of maybe a church context, but there's no social value in male virginity. If anything, especially in the dating market, you're seeing like there's something wrong with you. And I'm not saying there is. I'm saying that in terms of how men are perceived, being a virgin is not generally considered a sought after value. I mean, you tell me, in the dating market, when have you ever heard women saying they're looking for virgin men? If anything, the social expectation of men is that they know how to perform in bed. That's the weird dynamic to it. I talked about this a couple years ago. Right? The social expectation may be that an ideal woman not have a lot of bodies on her, as they call it. But there's also another side to that social expectation dynamic where men are supposed to know what to do in bed. And if you don't know what to do, let alone if you're a virgin, you are ridiculed for it. I mean, even going
Yeah.
back to high school, I remember men being talked about and laughed at if they did not perform to whatever mystical standard was set for them, often by women. So
You
this,
gotta be able to blow a back out.
yeah, you have to know you have to be a porn star. You have to know what you're doing. And if somehow you don't, there's something wrong with you. You know, and that's not even, that doesn't have anything to do with virginity even. Right. But see, this is a disingenuous question because he's not being honest about how men are treated in regard to what is expected of their sexual prowess. And I'll even go further to say black men in particular are expected to be sexually knowledgeable to a greater extent than any other group of men. I make that argument wholeheartedly. It is
Yeah.
a social expectation that black men not just have a large penis, but they know how to please a woman. And if you are a black man that does not know how to, you will be socially ridiculed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm missing something.
You ain't missing much.
All right.
Keep on, bro.
And number 18, when it comes to sex, if I say no, chances are that it will not be mistaken for yes.
Oh, like that one time when the woman basically killed her husband because he didn't want to have sex with her. You put that. It was you that had that article up, man.
And this. It's like he put together a list of things that sounded good to feminists, but that was about it. Anyway, if I am raped, no one will assume that I should have known better or suggest that my being raped had something to do with how I was dressed. First of all, when men are raped, nobody takes it seriously anyway. Matter of fact, you have to argue that this may have occurred, that your violation occurred. I talked about sleep rape a couple of years ago, where there was an article where a young man was saying that he was in his college dorm and there was a woman, he was in a co-ed dorm, and there was a woman that lived a couple of doors down that he'd seen around the campus, he'd seen in housing, but he hadn't associated with her. He wasn't attracted to her. He had not flirted with her. He woke up one morning, she was riding him, right? So he had a morning erection, but he was asleep. And when he woke up, she was riding him. And right as she came, she got up and walked out. And actually, I found 2 articles on that very issue in 2 different situations. Both of those men tried to come forward to say they were violated. Nobody took them seriously. Nobody. Matter of fact, when I brought it up in class, the first reaction I got from the women was that, oh, he was faking it. And the reason they said that is because there's a popular idea that men, because men like sex, that really they can't be violated. As long as they have a hard penis, They like sex. No matter what you do to them, it can never be a violation because men fundamentally don't get raped unless you're talking about prison, which is a low-key coded way of saying women can't rape men. That's really what that is.
Yeah, they men always want it.
Yeah.
They're insatiable. I mean, that's the same shit that like is used to justify the rape of women. She wanted it.
She wanted it. And that's
so it's the same. It's the same shit. He wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He could have just made it go down. He could have woke up.
Right. Yeah. There was another article about a guy he was married and his sister-in-law came to visit. And one morning, or I think it was late at night, he was asleep and his wife left somewhere. And he in the middle of the night, he was, he felt somebody touching him and he thought it was his wife. They had sex or whatever. And when she walked into the light, because it was still dark, when she happened to walk, I guess it was into the hallway. He kind of saw it wasn't his wife. It was his sister-in-law.
Oh, wow.
And when I read that article to a class, I explained it to nobody thought that he had been violated. The assumption was that he fully knew from the beginning that was his sister-in-law and he was just lying and making it up to get out of, any trouble related to him having sex with his sister-in-law. It never even crossed people's mind that he was telling the truth. Right? It couldn't be that he was telling the truth. It was all made up. Because again, men always want it, so they can't be violated. Anyway, let me see. So I can use sexist language like boning. Oh man, some of these are dated. Laying the pipe, hitting it, and banging that convey images of sexual acts based on dominance and performance.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's sexist.
Okay.
I hit it.
Okay.
Okay, I guess. Okay, whatever.
Right. All right. Whatever. I can live in a world where polygamy is still an option for men in the United States as well as around the world.
Okay, where? In the U.S.? Okay.
I mean, you have little small enclaves where that's the thing, but anyway. But let me ask you a question because this is interesting to me. Formal polygamy is one thing, but my question to you is: how standard is it? Would you say that people have multiple partners, even if in monogamous, quote unquote, monogamous relationships or marriages, women and men? Do you think it's a fairly standard thing that people engage in infidelity on one level or another, men and women?
I think so.
How do we regard that then in relation to this question? Because he's framing it as, an institutional thing that men engage in, even though in the US, technically polygamy is illegal, right? But if you talk about multiple overlapping relationships that men and women engage in, regardless of if they're married or in long-term relationships, how then can we understand this question differently? Do women engage in relationships in that fashion? Right? So,
hey, man, the way I see it, man, anyway, we got a default polygamy in the Black community with women anyway. They're the head of the household, man. They got kids by 3 or 4 different dudes in a lot of instances. So,
and do they?
It is what it is.
And they still require those men's participations in their lives.
Oh, they participating financially, even if they're not participating in terms of having any authority in the house. Yeah, they still are contributing financially in a lot of instances. This is what it is. So yeah, that's just my baby daddy. You keep moving.
I remember I don't know what the show was on, but there was a show discussion we had about 2 years ago where we started talking about how many men have met women who were still having sex with their exes, whether they were married now with somebody else or whether they were entertaining, long-term relationships with new people. How often was it that men ran into women that were still having sex with their exes despite being in relationships with new men? And my comment section was flooded with men talking about how often they'd experienced it. So I find it interesting when we get into these questions of polygamy. We only want to deal with it from the institutional level, which doesn't really apply in the US, but make it an around the world question. But we're not actually going to talk about what people do on the ground. Anyway. So number 22, in general, I prefer being involved with younger women socially and sexually.
August Alsina.
So preferring to be involved is a privilege. Okay.
August Alsina.
Well, and a number of others. I mean, who are some of the celebrities we've been hearing about? Erica Badu, and there's 5 or 6 of them that O'Shea Duke Jackson, done several videos on. But anyway, and we can take it back to how Stella got her groove back when that became a popular trope, and it's really coming back again.
Stella.
Of older women and younger men. But anyway, you could
He was hitting it. He was hitting it. It made me feel good. It's been so long since I felt good. It had been so long since I felt good.
Right.
He was banging.
Right.
He was laying the pipe.
Right. If you filtered this through SMV, we can flip the question and ask the question about, what is the interest of younger women and older men? Right. Now, and I say that because, when I was young and college aged, the women everybody wanted did not have time for the dudes she was going to school with. Her interests were always wealthier dudes with status and position. She was not interested in the dude next door in the dorm room. If she was sought after, she was beautiful. If her beauty was such that she had what we might call beauty privilege, she didn't waste that on dudes that were going to sit in the cafeteria with her. She was dealing with dudes that had resources. So, anyway, in general, the more sexual partners that I have, the more stature I receive among my peers. Okay. I think we talked a little bit about that. I have easy access to pornography that involves virtually any category of sex where men degrade women, often young women.
You got access to all kinds of porn, bro. You got dominatrix porn, ass worship porn, like I said.
Right.
What they call it. I don't even know what the defecation porn is called. But you got all that shit, bro. It is what it is.
Right.
The sword cuts both ways.
Mm-hmm. I have the privilege of being part of a sex where purity balls apply to girls but not boys.
Where they doing them at? Where them at? Like, I don't know. I don't know when none of that shit taking place in the hood. You ever heard of a purity ball, bro?
I haven't heard of a purity ball, brother. But my question is, did he even ask the question if girls actually value purity from men? And this is something I talked about a moment ago. When I deal with students, when I talk to especially younger folk, but people in general, right? I don't hear social value associated with men and sexual purity. Now, purity in the sense of not having a disease, maybe, but not in terms of not having sexual experience. Despite the lip service in public, this is something Patrice O'Neill talked about once, and he had me dying while he was doing it. He talked about how men, and this was his bit. He was talking about how men love to teach women new things sexually. And he said, but women can't stand it. He said, if you don't know what you're doing with a woman and she figures that out, she will get up and leave and you'll never see her again. And it was hilarious the way he put it together, but it pointed to an interesting dynamic, in terms of how boys and how men and women are perceived when they're not sexually experienced. Men still value women that are not necessarily sexually experienced. Women, not so much. Anyway.
Yeah, this dude been reading Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon, man. That's what this shit is about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pornography.
Yeah.
When I consume pornography, I gain pleasure from images and sounds of men causing women pain. Okay. All right. That's the only thing people. All right. So.
Okay.
That's, and this is what. Let me see. This is see if you put any page numbers on this joint. This is there's a lot here. So right now we're looking at popular culture, but I'll name the categories: popular culture, attitudes and ideology, sports, just diaspora / global, communication / language, relationships, church and religious traditions, and physical safety. Right. So he's got 94 points of what he regards to be privilege. Right. And so you guys can tear into this at your leisure. But at the end of the day, now this is old. I don't know if he's updated this. I haven't seen any recent publications where he's updated this, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just may be in a circle I'm not familiar with. Um, but I'll just grab a few at random, from a few categories, and we'll just burn through them. So I'll grab like two or three. So first one, I come from a tradition of humor that is based largely on insulting and disrespecting women, especially mothers. So he must be talking about the dozens.
Yeah, your mama, like that MTV show or some shit like that.
Right.
They call it Yo Mama. Okay, look, that's only because the mother joke it's a joke about something inviolable. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's told. Like nobody gives a fuck about saying something about your daddy.
Mm.
No, nobody cares. You
Right.
can insult dad, no big deal. But if you insult the mother, there's a problem. So that's what that whole dynamic is centered around anyway. The reverence of the mother figure. So
That's an excellent point. And the test is, can you get through a ribbing session without getting offended? Right? If you throw in the dozens back and forth and you get mad and want to fight, you lost. That's how it's
right.
perceived. So they use the mother to incite that anger. But if it was about fathers, you're absolutely right. Nobody would care. Nobody would
Look at 28. I have the privilege of not having black women dress up and play funny characters. What does that even mean?
often overweight that are supposed to look like me for the entire nation to laugh? What? I have the privilege of not having black women dress up and play. Okay, so is he talking about the comedic tradition of black men dressing up like women? Is that what that is?
I guess Medea or Shanae or the Jamie Foxx character. I can't remember what she was. Or
I think
whatever.
that was Shanae. No. It wasn't Shanae. That was Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But no,
Okay.
but how many comedians have actually complained that this was a trope that they were forced to play if they wanted to continue with their careers? How many of them opposed this?
Dave said he opposed it.
Yeah, and a lot of comedians had complained that this was a trope that Hollywood wanted to see, most particularly like virile and muscular men, dominant men. It became almost kind of like a requirement that at some point in their career, as comedians and actors, that they dress as women.
Tu Wong Fu.
Ving Rhames.
Oh man, I saw Ving Rhames do that shit. I was like, man, what am I watching, bro?
Exactly. Right. So the question is that a privilege or is that an imposition? Is that a requirement placed on you in order to
Buck breaking, man.
career? Buck breaking. Yeah. I'm just grabbing it random. This is the last one I'll do for this category. I'm not even reading it first. I'm just grabbing a number. So 35. I can wear a shirt that others and I commonly refer to as a wife beater and never have the language challenged.
Okay, well.
Okay, so it's a shirt called a wife beater. I'm just curious. Is that, I don't know, is that something black men created? I'm trying to understand.
Nah, black men didn't create that shit. I don't even know why it's called a wife beater, by the way, either. I just don't know.
I've never actually known that, and I've never seen men really get off on that. It was just what people called it. All right, attitudes and ideology. I'm just grabbing number 41. I can believe that the success of the black family is dependent on returning men to their historical place within the family, rather than in promoting policies that strengthen black women's independence or that provide social benefits to black children. Shout out to Andre for the support and Tereshay for the Cash App. Appreciate that. Andre says, I was a Jehovah's Witness from 6 to 17, and a lot of older women been known to take advantage. Hold on. Put it on the screen. Been known to take advantage of younger boys. It's never put out to the public.
Oh, they wanted it.
And this is what you find when you look at Dr. Curry's paper, She Touched Me, right? The age of sexual debut for black boys is the youngest, because it's older girls and women that are violating black boys that are presumed to be sexually active and have a high degree of sexual prowess simply because they're black boys. But he's talking about this within a Jehovah's Witness context, which is really interesting because you don't hear too much about that.
Anyway. Yeah, bro.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, but this whole question of, the black family dependent on returning men to their historical places in the family rather than promoting policies that strengthen. is strengthening Black women's independence really at need at this point?
Hey, bro, what that shit is to basically make the man obsolete in relation to the development or the socialization of children. That's the effect that it has. You know, I mean, like, you didn't make the child independently, so why would you have, independence to rear the child independently? That's not just her child. It's a fucking father's child as well. Mm-hmm. Now, it might not be, the man inside of the context of the family, but if that's not going to be the case, at least give the man access to the child. Right. You understand what I mean? So right now, what we do is we have uncle daddy relationships, and he wants to strengthen that shit. Fuck you.
Get it.
I can say, Jewel, kiss my ass, Jewel. Fuck that.
And look, man, we already know, it's well over, it's over 70% Black children born to unwed mothers, right? So, the single parent household is the dominant framework in the Black community. How exactly is strengthening Black women's independence a priority when that's already the norm?
It's the norm, bro. It is what it is. We live in a gynarchy. We got a female patriarchy, bro. It is what it is. You can say it's not that way. It is that way. I've seen it operate that way. And then they introduce men in and have them perform, the stepdaddy role. But it ain't even the old school partnership where it's like, okay, you're going to treat this man with respect. It's like, you treat me with respect. If he start tripping, I'm going to put him in his place. Son status, husband, son.
Look, man, even when I was a kid, if you were raised with two kids in two parents in the Black community, people treated you like an anomaly. And that was in the early 1980s. People would treat you like, wow, you got your father's home? Like it was treated like you were a damn alien. So how exactly is strengthening further independence a priority when that's the freaking no anyway? So I'm gonna grab number 44. I have the privilege of believing that before slavery, gender relationships between Black men and women were perfect. What? What the hell does that even mean? Oh, okay. So he's saying, that this mythical perfect relationship in Africa prior to enslavement, Black men believe in it, and it's a privilege that they do.
Okay.
That there were no problems with relationships prior to enslavement. So that's somehow a privilege that he says Black men. So in essence, he's talking about what's derogatively referred to as hoteps.
Yeah,
Africa is the standard for perfect Black relationships.
Having a father involved is thinking that he should be there is a privileged way of thinking.
Okay. Number 47. I have the privilege of believing that household responsibilities are women's roles. Interesting. But we can flip that question too. Who has the privilege to believe that men should provide regardless of how much she makes in a relationship? Who has that privilege? If we're going to use privileged language, which I think is stupid, but if we're going to use it, even if men decide to be in relationships where they don't work, that is not socially applauded. You're still socially punished, even if you're a good father and husband. If you're a stay-at-home husband, stay-at-home father, that's not seen as a social good.
No, you're a bum.
Yeah, that's the moment you upset her and she's talking to her family or her friends, watch how quick that language change.
Oh, don't make a sandwich without her being awake. She gonna slap that shit off the table.
Man. Oh my God. Okay. You want to grab a couple of these, man?
Okay. I will make significantly more money as a professional athlete than members of the opposite sex will.
Okay.
I mean, true. But women will also make more money on Instagram twerking than men will.
So you're saying the market decides?
Hey, it just is what it is. Like, men want to see women twerk.
Right.
Men want to see other men hit shots. Men don't want to see women shoot the basketball, bro. It is what it is, like
women don't want to see women shoot the basketball, man. I mean, look, man, if women are actually in the majority in terms of raw numbers, if women wanted to support the WNBA, how exactly could anybody prevent it?
Well, I want to move away from the market-based argument. But let me just say this. To me, what sports is the sublimation of war. Okay? It's a space where, men compete against each other in a way that's non-violent. I mean, for the most part. I mean, and even if there is violence, there's controlled violence. It's not violence to the death. Okay? So it's a sublimation of competition amongst men to achieve a goal. And I think that, until women start fighting wars and shit like that, I mean, but women who do certain kinds of sports get paid more so than some men. Like Serena makes more than the average tennis, the male who plays tennis. I'm pretty sure that Rousey, the woman who was doing MMA, she made more money than some dudes. You know what I'm saying? In MMA. But yeah, I mean, generally men make more cash. But I mean, there's a reason for that. Like women make more money stripping and shit like that than men do, being what they call Chippendale type shits. Male strip, women make more money stripping than men make stripping, It's just the way shit is, bro. Like, and you can call it privilege if you want to. So, women rule certain areas of economic life, and men rule some areas of economic life. It just is what it is. The sword cuts both ways, bro.
Okay, choose another one.
I'm going to 55. I know that most sports analysts are male. That's increasingly becoming not true. But for the most part, it is true though. It's typically people who play the game, but because
former athletes in the game, yeah,
or people who've coached, or people who've trained, or something like that, or journalists in general. So, but that's typically becoming different. It's not the same as it was. Even black women who are doing sports analysis now.
Tell me this: what's the case for female sports in terms of the analysts and the commentators? I don't really watch a lot of sports anyway, so I'm just curious.
Well, if it's women's sports, like who's, commentating about the WNBA? Is it a bunch of men?
I have no idea. That's why I was. Yeah,
I don't think so, but I'm not quite sure. I just I just don't watch women's basketball. Every now and then I'll watch women's softball if it's on. I'll watch women's tennis. If one of them is playing. I like to watch Osaka. I like to watch the Williams sisters, Serena, because Venus don't really play anymore. But
okay,
it's just like women don't run the physical world in the way that men, do. It's just like I'll watch women's gymnastics because they can do shit men can't do, right? In terms of flipping their bodies and shit like that. I mean, they do things that men can't do, and men do things they can't do. It's just, I don't know, bro. Let's go to another one. I'm able to play sports outside with my shirt on and it not be considered a problem.
Oh, without my shirt on. Okay.
Yeah.
That's without a problem. Okay.
Hey, man, if you want to go bare-chested, man, you got them double D's flopping, you go ahead, baby.
How exactly is not wearing a shirt a privilege in that regard? Going outside without a shirt is a privilege. Okay. Interesting.
Hey, I mean, hey, man, I don't go outside for the most part without a shirt, but hey, I get it. To some extent I can understand, like, but if there are women who really feel like, okay, fuck it, I want to go out there and let everybody see my tits or whatever, it is what it is, hey.
Well,
that's some white shit to me, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just choose. So this is diaspora and global. We'll just do 2 of each one from here on through. I'll just grab 65. I have the privilege of being a part of the sex that starts wars and that wields control of almost all the existing weapons of war and mass destruction. Interesting. So when we look at what just took place in the Ukraine, when those men were being snatched off trains and forced into combat, whether they wanted to or not, did that make any of this consideration? Obviously, the Ukraine happened much after he wrote this list, but my point is the social expectation that men serve in war because some men started it. Somehow all men are participatory. They have to be coerced.
Yeah,
Men,
like everybody doesn't. All men don't benefit from war. In fact, men are the demographic that benefits least from war. They fucking die, bro. They
yeah.
get killed.
Hmm. Hmm.
They get murdered the most, man. On the battlefield. They get killed the most on the battlefield.
And what happens
This,
if there's a draft?
oh shit, we throw you in jail.
Well, I'm
If
saying
the,
the only people that got to go if there's a draft are men.
yeah, the only people that got to go are the dudes, man. But I mean, that should change. Put them out. I say put an M16 in their hand, man. Get it. Let them get it in.
There have been conversations about women going to war, and by and large, women as a group are not pushing to be a part of a draft. They're not. They are
Shit,
not.
get it in like Israel. It's real like Israel.
Yeah,
Shit, them women got to get drafted. They got to fight.
yeah, they do.
You
But
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So it's there's a precedent for it.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Fuck all these nails and all this goddamn weave and shit. Get your ass out there in the trenches.
Yeah.
Get your
Women,
canteen, get your backpack, get your M16, get your compass ready. We be about to go marching.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Women are not pushing for that. Well, apparently there's another category, college. I didn't see it because he didn't have its space, but I'll just grab one more from the diaspora. Number 62. I have the privilege of not having rape be used as a primary tactic or tool to terrorize my sex during war and times of conflict.
That's
And
absolutely false.
I did a whole piece on this in terms of war rape, and men do suffer a great deal from war rape. The fact that it doesn't make the news doesn't mean that it's not happening and it doesn't impact men. It's been happening for thousands of years. It continues to happen to this day. And as a matter of fact, most men who experience war rape have nowhere to go to resolve their issues. Many of them don't even have anywhere to go to resolve what the damage that took place on medical terms, let alone the psychological damage they've experienced.
I got two words.
Mhm.
Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you had them. Even women participated in this shit. They had them. They had them Muslims in dog collars. You know, like I mean, in dog chains. You know, walking them around and shitting on them and you know, penetrating their anuses and stuff like that. Man, it is what it is, man. I mean, to say that it's not happening, that's like, you know, a lot of people right now don't want to actually admit that black men and boys were raped during slavery,
Mm-hmm.
and that there was buck breaking occurring during slavery.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, you know, like black men were violated during slavery. It is what it is. You can't deny it.
Shout out to Incognito. Appreciate that support. Also, shout out to Dr. CD2. Shout out to Wrench Turner. Appreciate that support. Go ahead and grab a couple after 66 for college.
In college, I will have the opportunity to date outside of the race at a much higher rate than black women will.
Okay.
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 I don't know. I guess, you know, they say black men have the opportunity to date white women more. But, you know, for the most part, I don't know if that's a privilege, you know.
Well, I mean, the whole question comes down to desirability. And we know, again, Christian Rudder's book, Cataclysms, he talks about this. The two people least desired in the dating market were Asian men and black women. Black men, to my knowledge, were not the most desired men, but they were, I want to say, in the top two, top three, you know, as far as that's concerned. But here's the thing, though. When you talk about sexual stereotypes applied to black folk, and there's a lot of them, right? In terms of the men, you have stereotypes like the buck, you have the stereotypes like the mandingo. To women, you got stereotypes like not the sapphire. Oh goodness. Oh man, how am I blanking on it? I had in one of my PowerPoints, and I've been lecturing on it for years. But right now, I'm blanking on the title of the stereotype. But the sexually desirous black woman, there's those stereotypes go back for centuries. But here's the thing about that. As far as men and desirability, black men are often sought after, even by other groups, in regard to their sexual prowess, as it relates to these stereotypes that go back centuries about black men and sex. The difference, however, is that because of those greater number of interactions where women women of other groups participate in that sexual engagement with men, they actually are able to meet men and go past the stereotype and get to know people, and that begins to affect the dating market. But Black men actually do suffer from sexual objectification. It's not something that Black men don't suffer from. It's just that it's from there relationships actually can develop, but Black men do suffer from it as well. Anyway.
Yeah, Black men don't really date outside the race as much as people make on or let on. You know, some men get married to Black men get married to white women, and but like, just to be honest, man, like Black women, man, are a little hard to deal with, dude. They're a little hard to deal with, bro. You know what I'm saying? They want to be that boss bitch. You can't tell me what to do. You know, like, this is what it is,
not
bro.
Acculturated to that. They're not acculturated to, dominant women like that, masculine, kind of expressions of femininity. That's not how, other groups are socialized.
I'm, not to, if that's a privilege, okay, well. Okay.
Well, shout out to
I wouldn't, look, to me, being able to date a white person, to me, is not a privilege. Okay? Mm-hmm. Like, almost as if, like, first of all, the thing that fucks me up about all of this is, when I think of privilege, it harkens back to a time when privilege actually meant something, in terms of, okay, this person is of a higher class than I am. Like, they're a member of the nobility, or they're a member of the clergy in the medieval European world. Like, that's what privilege is to me.
Right.
But these symbolic notions of, or like access to different kind of areas of life, or, there's some things that you're able to do more so than others. I mean, that's true of both men and women. And that needs to be said. Like, what kind of privileges do women have? The privilege to be able to be protected and go first when there's danger. Make sure all the women and children are evacuated first. It's not the same for men. Or draft time. You're the expendable party. So you put your life on the line before anyone else. You're someone who could give up their life to save someone else's. So your life is not paramount. It's not primary. It's secondary. Okay? That shit is not being said. So, I mean, there's some things that women enjoy. There's some things that men enjoy. I'm not even, like, this whole notion that, like, everything is just privilege for men is a crock of shit. It is. Like, men take the most dangerous jobs. They get paid more, but I mean, shit, they do more. They expose themselves to risk more. Okay? Now, when women have jobs that expose them to risk, they get paid. Like, nurses get paid a lot of money, man. Mm-hmm. But then the counter argument will be, well, male nurses get paid more than women. Women who are nurses. But shit, men often take the extra training and become specialists, whereas women will be like, fuck it, I'm good. I'm cool with this. I'm cool with this, that. I mean, those women who do, take the specialized training, they make just as much, if not more, than the men. So, I mean, there's back and forth, man. The knife cuts, or the sword cuts both ways. This is just a feature and a function of life, right? And shit, a woman, all she got to do is bat her eyelashes, motherfuckers will give her some free food or some shit like that. I've seen that happen on several occasions.
Well, hold on. Let me shout out a number of brothers. Appreciate Clutch and Stick, Fabrication Unlimited. There's a couple more brothers in here. Dusty Hotep, Akibalon. A number of you guys named the stereotype I was referring to. I forgot. It was the Jezebel. And this is a stereotype that, believe it or not, goes back to the 17th century, when Europeans would travel to Africa and misinterpreted the nudity and polygamy of natives as an uncontrollable sexual lust. So, these are old stereotypes that play out in a variety of ways. But I wanted to shout those brothers out for pointing that out. Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, hey, shit, if they should have been born in continental Africa before slavery, then shit, them women, apparently they was wearing their shirts off. I mean, they was rocking breast in the forest.
Well, and there are many different cultures around the world where that was a norm. So is he talking specifically about the United States in the 21st century? Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is. All right. Let me see. I'll grab one from the college area. Uh, by the time I enter college and even through college, I have the privilege of not having to worry whether I will be able to marry a black woman. What?
Man, okay. Yeah, so I guess the expectation is that, like black women got to go to college and find a husband or some shit like that.
But that's the opposite of what's happening. I mean, even Kevin Samuels was talking about this. The way black women are socialized, they marry later in life after they get their careers together. They don't marry in college. That's not the norm. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but in terms of how we're socialized, the preference is put on her career. So her degrees first, her career second. Marriage doesn't really become a factor until the 30s, as far as many black women are, so in terms of how they're framed to look at it. So this whole question of I can find a wife in college, that's not how that goes.
Man, first of all, I went to school with a whole bunch of black women, man, at a HBCU connected to number 72. I didn't exploit these women. I mean, I don't even know what it means to exploit them. Like, exploit them how? Make them do your homework or some shit? Have sex with them? I mean, like what? Like, how? You mean rape them? Like, I think that's what he actually means. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll have the opportunity to rape them or some shit like that. But look, bro, I went to school, man. The numbers were 8-1, bruh. If these women wasn't trying to marry nobody, bruh, for real, no way. They wasn't. These women was about career at the school. They were about their education.
Right.
All this marriage shit, I don't remember any of. I've been with several of them, and I don't remember them talking about we gonna get married. No, wasn't a dynamic, bro. I went to HBCU, filled with women.
Wasn't the norm. No, wasn't the norm. Communication, what is defined as news in Black America is defined by men.
That's not true. Not in today's climate.
Okay. So, which black-owned entities are we talking about that determine androcentric news? I'm just curious.
BET. Tavis Smiley.
Is that black-owned? Oh, that's Tavis. Okay. BET ain't even black-owned. So, are we talking about Tavis? Roland? Is that what we're looking at?
Roland Martin.
Okay. All right.
Larry Elder.
That they're determining black news.
Man, this shit is so, bro. This is so old, man.
Well, yeah, like, yeah. Go ahead.
This shit is old, bro.
Yeah.
This is old, man.
You know what? This is what I want to do. Let's do two from relationships and just kind of, because these are ridiculous. You go ahead and pick, man. What you want to do?
Okay. If I'm considering divorce, I know that I have substantially more marriage and cohabitation options than my spouse. What? Man, that's a damn lie.
Well, remember, this is probably written.
It's a motherfucking lie. You're a goddamn lie. You're a motherfucking lie. You're a goddamn liar, sir.
Man.
First of all, you're going through a divorce, a motherfucking woman gonna look at you like, oh, fuck no. Especially you saying you right in it. Oh, no. You have more options to be a son husband or a husband son or some shit like a husband son. A concuserve.
Oh my goodness.
But that's a goddamn lie, man. If you get divorced, it'll probably bankrupt you.
Yes, sir.
As a black man.
Yes, sir.
Might not come back from the shit. A lot of guys commit suicide after that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
No. That's that fugazi bullshit right there, bro.
And it's interesting because Theo Wilson in the TED talk I was playing earlier, he actually talks about more men committing suicide in response to divorce, but he flips it in terms of talking about privilege in regard to mistreating women. So it's interesting how he'll cover, and this is something we see with Jewel at the beginning of this piece and with Mark Anthony Neal. They'll gloss over some statistics that are clearly worse for men and then immediately flip it with something that I would argue is far less central to the point, to make a point about privilege that doesn't really have any standing. But you know, I don't know. Well,
Okay.
so I'll grab number, I don't know, 81. I have the privilege of not having to assume most of the household or child care responsibilities. Okay.
Well, shit. I mean, I don't. I really. First of all, you don't have the privilege of having your own kids in the house with you and shit. You got. Anyway, I'm being ignorant by saying that.
You
But
don't well, and who more often gets custody upon divorce is a factor in this. But I will also say that if black men are regarded by study, by the data, to be the most involved, and when I say most involved, they actually categorize that in terms of helping with homework, in terms of bathing and eating, spending time with. There are a lot of those factors there that refute these assumptions, most particularly about household roles and childcare responsibility. Even if you go back to the 1980s when they were talking about this, that's what, when it became popular, 70s and 80s, to talk about women doing a double shift, right? Having to work and then come home and clean while he has his feet kicked up, watching the game, drinking a beer. That was actually debunked. If you go back to Warren Farrell's work in the 80s, Myth of Male Power, one of the things he talked about was the ways in which men's contributions to household labor have long since been buried under the rug to make this point about this feminist point about women, to make it appear as if women were doing all the work and men were just exploiting them. But in order to make that point, they actually had to dismiss data about men's contributions to household and childcare responsibilities. And so they're still doing it, and this list is contributing to that as well.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, man, brothers in the household, man. I know a whole bunch of dudes who live with women and shit like that, and they end up doing damn near more work and taking care of the kids more than the damn women do.
Mm.
Real talk. I'm keeping it 1,000 when I say that. You know what I'm saying? Especially if they got kids in common, not kids from a different marriage and shit or different couplings or whatever. Just the reality is, brothers washing dishes, cooking meals, the whole bunch of shit. Washing
Right.
clothes. Vacuuming, whatever the case may be. Then they gotta still wash the car and still gotta cut the grass and.
And what happens to men who want full custody and are willing to do this 24/7 with their own kids? How often do they get that custody? Even if the mother is demonstrably unfit. How many men talk about losing access to that?
She's a natural caretaker.
Right.
She's the natural, nurturer. It's in the best interest of the child to be with the mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is, I'm not saying that's really actually true, but I'm saying that's the way that the ball bounces.
Mm-hmm.
And women know that shit. And so they use it to their advantage. It is what it is. Look, some of these things to me, like I said before, the sword cuts both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Do men enjoy certain privileges? I wouldn't even call them privileges. It's just that certain things favor men, certain things favor women. But to act as if all the favor in the world just turns upon men because we live in a patriarchal society, it's absolutely ridiculous, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for people to push back against these narratives that, because we live in a patriarchal society, it favors and benefits all men equally and works to the detriment of all women equally. It's really a blunt force argument. It's not very nuanced. It's based on, Manichaeism or, Marxian dualism. It's just not accurate. And, we need a more fine-grained and a more probing and intimate, no, I wouldn't say intimate, but I would say intricate analysis than that offered up, in this dualistic way. I find it to be, it's just rough.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very a very skilled analysis. But I mean, it's one that, women have been pushing for like fucking the past 70, 80 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shit. At the very same time that housework has become easier for both men and women, we still find a way to complain about housework. Like I've had motherfuckers. When I was a kid, man, I was forced to wash dishes and shit. You know what I'm saying? As a
Yeah,
kid,
me
you
too.
know.
Oh yeah.
And I had to. And my OG, man, she made a lot of fucking. She cooked up with a lot of dishes. It seemed like every night it was like 5 or 6 pots and pans. Like, damn, we ain't eating all this, are we? Damn. Like, about 7, 8 pots and shit. But I mean, when I think about it, we didn't have like the privilege of having dishwashers and shit like that. I didn't. So nowadays these kids don't even want to fucking put the dishes in the dishwasher. They just put the shit in the sink, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, all you got to do is lay the dish in the fucking dishwasher. Well, it's got food on it. The dishwasher has a fucking garbage disposal in it.
Mm.
So just don't put bones and shit in there. But I mean, anything else you can, for the most part, put in there.
But here's the thing, though. When we have these discussions about social roles, gender roles in relationships, we hear them tilted to women's oppression and men being these exploitive, toxic beings that take advantage of it. But what is often not discussed are the social expectations that shape our gender role contributions, meaning that there are expectations of men that don't make this discussion. So again, if you're out in public and it seems like a situation where she feels threatened, what is expected of you as the man in the equation?
Put
Right?
yourself at risk.
Well, but we're gonna act like there are no such things as gender roles, right? We're gonna act like men have no such contributions to it. They just take advantage of it and exploit women. But we're not going to talk about the expectations and the emotional labor that men are expected to provide without discussion. Look, even women you don't even know. If you're walking down the street and a woman finds herself under threat, she'll look at you for protection. And if you don't provide it, others will look at you like you're less than a man. This expectation isn't limited to intimate partnerships. It's an expectation that is socially widespread, that men are supposed to provide protection and provisioning on one level or another, even without acknowledgement. But we can have a long conversation about who got to wash the dishes. We're not going to have a conversation about who needs to lay hands on a man that said something to you or that made you feel insecure, or if you heard a bump downstairs in the middle of the night. Those are expectations that are unreflectively expected for men to handle.
Man, I've had miscellaneous women tell me in the grocery store, "Can you reach that and grab that for me?
Oh yeah,
Grab that for
absolutely.
me, hun."
Absolutely.
I'm like, huh?
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm like, but I'll grab the shit, you know what I'm saying? Because, I'll just do it. But I mean, it ain't no big deal. But I mean, the whole point is, it is a social expectation that you do things, for people who can't do it for themselves, or act as, or put on as if they can't do it for themselves. You know what I mean?
Well, think about the last show we did on my channel where we were looking at that video of the dollar store and the man was attacked by the manager, the black female manager or whatever, right? The social expectation that he not hit her was rampant. So even when she tackled him, he was still withdrawing and withholding, responding, even in the sense of protecting himself. And the moment it looked like he might do something to her, another man had to run in and grab him, even though he was saying, "I'm not going to hit her," right? Because he was socially expected to provide protection, right? So this man is not even defending himself, and other men have to pop in to protect. So this is, again, a gender role contribution that men are expected to give without reflection. And that's just one. We can talk about several, but the fact that this is not a part of the mainstream discussion, I find disingenuous in and of itself. So again, we talk about dishes, we talk about, whatever women are unsatisfied with makes the discussion. But there's no lip service paid to the expectations of men, even at the threat of loss of life. And somehow,
because for you to have an expectation at all is to be exploitative. Because that's the general thrust is you're already exploitative. You already have privilege. You already are receiving the bulk of the benefits,
right,
the boons that society has to offer. And
yes,
women are sorely lagging behind. And they need to be caught up. And the only way they can be caught up is if you change your disposition. We need to educate men to think differently. Right? Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, this was initially applied to race, then extended to sex. And so, black men are, of course, this is going to be problematic for black men, because of the positions that we occupy. And are men to some degree sexist? I would think that many of them are, but so are many women. And many women have social expectations of men that fit into, things that are, I would call self-effacing, or self, sacrificing. It's those are the expectations, right? And
But
so,
yeah,
you're supposed to put yourself at risk before her. Okay.
but here's the thing, and your point is well on point. Right? If sexism, we call it misandry, right, or most particularly anti-black misandry. But if we just use the term sexism for the moment, men are sexist, women are sexist. Hell, you can have LGBTs that are sexist. Even though we don't have that kind of nuanced conversation, but the difference is we in mainstream society, we have a sense that sexism against women and LGBTs is bad. We don't have a sense that men, even heterosexual men, even suffer from any type of sexism. That's not even on the agenda. Just like when we were talking about sexual assault victimization earlier, there is at least a sense of what that looks like for women. Like when I ask my students, when I say sexual assault, when I say rape, what do you think of? I think of a guy running down the alley with a knife and he forces sex on a woman. Okay, you have a narrative for that. What is sexual victimization for men? My classes, absolutely silent. There is no response because we don't have a collective narrative for male sexual victimization other than prison, but that's treated like a joke. So,
or it's treated like something that's deserved for previous transgressions.
Well,
it's almost as if it's deserved. It's part of the punitive process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how it's perceived, right? And then also, you're not really a man if you allow someone to violate you to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's that narrative as well. So I mean, either way you look at it, in some people's minds, it's a man's world, and men, have all of the spoils, and women are just, these peasants, and they're like Cinderella and shit, and we're like the evil stepsisters and shit.
Yeah.
And some people are just going to see that, and that's the way that they're going to see things. And then, I look at the world in a nuanced and in a fine-grained way. There's no cookie cutter approach to talking about privilege. And in essence, to me, these things don't really add up to privilege at all anyway, especially in the society we live in. So what happens when you don't have a politics that you could talk about openly and frankly that's not characterized as patriarchy or misogyny? Mm. We don't even have that. Mm. Is that a privilege, or is it a disadvantage? Right? Is it a privilege to be among more of your demographic in a college classroom, or is it a disadvantage? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, how are you characterizing advantage and disadvantage? Is it an advantage to be invisible and to be perceived as non-threatening, or is it a disadvantage? Right? Is it a privilege to be perceived as a threat and to be killed more, or is it a disadvantage? Right? And so we have to begin to think differently about some of these things, and men have to push back. And unfortunately, like, this idea that you got to check yourself is like playing on people's guilt and shit like that. Like, and first of all, white people don't give a fuck. Kwame Ture said this shit a long time ago, man. Like, not Kwame Ture. Yeah, that is him. Stokely Carmichael. Anyway, he's like, basically, he was like, look, the civil rights movement got something wrong. They thought the white people had a conscience. They don't have a fucking conscience. The only reason they did what they did was because it was politically expedient to do so. I'm talking about the civil rights legislation in the 60s. It was during the Cold War, okay? And, I think this has been pretty much, described by Derek Bell pretty accurately. It's like the civil rights movement was just window dressing, in order for white people to do something they wanted to do in order to, meet some sort of diplomatic goal. They don't really give a fuck about Negroes. Okay? And we live in a world where, this people play on white guilt. I think that Black Lives Matter shit was a play on white guilt.
Absolutely was.
Yeah. And, but ask yourself if any of the structures changed. Does anything actually change as a result of this kind of political approach? I don't think it does. And we got to get something straight here. So what we're not, like, as Black male scholars, what we don't want is to try to get people to do what they did for BLM, but to do it for Black men. All we want is justice. All we want is to say, hey, look, stop fucking with us. Give us the opportunity to do for ourselves, or give us the opportunity to be treated as human beings like everybody else is treated.
But part of it too is that we're asking that this be scaled based on what we know empirically is happening, because in many ways we're determining the value of various types of oppression or whatnot on the basis of feelings, on the basis of mood, on the basis of trend and sentiment. But we really need to make these decisions on the basis of importance. If you got, if there's a particular demographic that's dying of cancer at a rate of 70% and another one at 5%, that shit needs to be measured in scale. You got to deal with the people that are actually suffering from the issues on the table to the extent that they're dealing with it. And that's not what's happening. What we have right now is the scale is set by trends and what's important in trend. And that includes academic trends, but it's not being determined based on need and severity of the issues. And that's what I think part of the whole empirical push in Black male studies is about, to put this shit in an accurate framework in regard to scale and who's actually dealing with what.
Yeah, so we need to start looking at metrics of well-being. That's one of the things I think Black studies scholars or Black male studies scholars need to pay attention to, is the philosophy of well-being. Okay. And it's a whole area of philosophy and a whole area of inquiry that's like really buzzing right now. But when you start looking at well-being, there are some really objective measures that you could use, and none of this shit really actually makes reference to that. I call this either the politics of recognition or the politics of hyperbolic fear. Okay. Or Black men walking around afraid to death, like every step that they take? No. And women aren't either. So that's some bullshit. You're not going to convince me that women are just scared every fucking where they go. I'm not buying it. And neither are men. Neither are Black men. Now, there are some sketchy situations, but this is part of the human condition. Like the idea that we can create the ideal society where nobody feels fear. Everyone is comfortable all the time. Everyone sees an image of themselves as flattering all the time. And like men, all men see flattering images of themselves, but never any ones that are deprecating.
Right.
It's just false.
Right.
Especially as it pertains to Black men. We see a whole bunch of step and fetch it thugs, gangster types everywhere. We see very little, lionization of Black men who are moving beyond the stereotype of what's cool, okay? White men don't have to be cool. I'm not saying that they can't be cool, but I mean, like, to them, their value is not in being cool. He's cool. Okay. But for us, there's this aesthetic of coolness, hipness that has to be present in order for us to be likable or for us to be taken seriously. And until we can move beyond that, our value is based upon bullshit stereotypes, personas and personality, archetypes that, have no bearing on reality. Everybody can't be fucking cool. A Jay-Z type or whatever, everybody's not hip, and shouldn't have to be.
Right.
So,
well, look, man, I appreciate this. I appreciate you coming through. Tell people how to find you and what's coming next.
I'm GG, man. I'm on a show. My channel is called Green Gorilla, just the way it sounds. And typically I'm on between 5, 10, and 7 p.m. I've been on a hiatus a little bit lately. But what I want to begin to do is to explore more feminist philosophy so you can understand it more intricately and understand it more intimately. And I'll be reading more of it more often. Now, I don't know if you consider that to be something you're interested in, but I think you need it anyway. I'm gonna do it even if it doesn't drive, a lot of people to the channel and y'all don't want to watch the videos. I'm gonna do it anyway because I think it needs to be done. So,
and I think it's important for us to understand what exactly these people are doing, and it's something that you don't find that many of these feminists are willing to do, to actually listen to what Black men are arguing, what they're saying, and that goes for the larger society as well. So I applaud you. I will definitely be supporting. Y'all support the Green Gorilla channel. So I
for sure,
appreciate
man.
you too, man.
Yeah, support the Green Gorilla channel, man. I need your support to stay on top, man, and to keep doing what I do. So anytime y'all can drop me some little support, man, I appreciate that, for real.
Yeah, man, we need that Hulk smash, man. That's all that is.
Well, every now and then, like I just don't want to be angry all the time. Some of this shit gets me pissed off, man. Like some of the things I read and some of the things I see, it really gets my goat, man. So every now and then it's necessary for me to engage in what, I guess the woke crowd now is calling self-care or whatever. I have to do that shit, bro, because there are times when this shit, like, it'll have you in a bad disposition, man.
Yes, it's draining.
Yeah, it'll have you in a bad disposition. And the world is not like that 24/7. You know what I'm saying? So it's about what you decide to focus on or what you choose to focus on sometimes. Now, the objective reality of the world is going to go on without you one way or the other. But
and that's why you'll see me occasionally, I'll head to the beach and I'll put up video of me just sitting at the beach, because the reality is you do got to engage in that, man. There's just so much that hasn't been said about Black men that I feel that it's necessary to focus on it, because there's been such a long history of silence and coerced silence at that there's a lot to catch up on. But you are absolutely right. It can be draining. It can be harmful, to oneself, to have to deal with this day in and day out. And I get shit in my inbox, brother, on a daily basis that is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, so one of the things I just want Black men to know is that it's okay, man. Like, have pain sometimes and to deal with the shit.
Right.
Like, you're not impervious to harm, motherfucker. If you put your hand over a flame, that shit will burn you, bro. Yeah. If you neglect dealing with some psychological issues you're going through, man, that shit will build up, man, and you will explode. And you want to be prepared so that you don't explode at the wrong moment, at the wrong person, for the wrong reason.
Right.
Because then you'll fuck up, something good you got going, because you haven't reflected on it or had catharsis through whatever means, you created for yourself, whether it's exercise, whether it's reading, whether it's music, whatever it is, because at some point we got to find, political activity and, discussion of issues and, like consciousness raising and venting, it's necessary. But damn, sometimes you got to do some other shit, bro. You got to. If you don't, man, you're going to hurt yourself.
Well, and that's why I want folks to support the Green Gorilla channel, so the brother can keep bringing you fire content and also be able to breathe. So, and look, again, thanks for coming through, man.
Oh, for sure, bro. Appreciate you having me here, man. And let me know what you think about the document I sent to you, man, so I can make some changes and additions to it. And if it's not, this is a sidebar. But, I want to make it right. And I want to make, it probably needs to be some more there. But I told you I'd have it at you about 12 p.m. today. And I think I delivered on that. So
yeah, I appreciate it, man. I will definitely do that.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, man. All right.
And Kadash Chaya, yes, you could use my music, but you got to make sure it's mine. You know what I'm saying? Like if I post it as an individual video, that's my music, you can use it. You understand? So I do use samples and shit like that, but they're royalty-free samples. Not all of it sampling. I play over it as well. And you can see one of my most recent videos where I'm playing the shit out of my computer keyboard. That's what I do, man. It ain't that difficult, man. So yeah, you can use my music. Make sure it's mine. You feel me?
Okay.
And just give me credit, man. Just leave a link to where you got the video, where you got the music from in your description. So yeah, use that shit.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pull you down. But thanks a lot, brother.
All right, man. Peace.
Peace. Shout out to the Green Gorilla channel. Again, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will, so we can continue to bring you content that you're really not going to get anywhere else. As far as this is concerned, look, I've known about Woods' checklist for some years. Again, I published an article that was fairly critical of it. I still stand on that position, but I don't. My thing is, look, I'm not arguing that Black women don't suffer from various issues. What I argue against is the disingenuous way that Black men are conceptualized to make these critiques in and of themselves, whether it be from Black feminist or intersectionalist standpoints, or whether it be from, Black men who are trying to ingratiate themselves to feminism. My issue is, if you're going to exploit the image, representation, and idea of Black men, then we got to push back with data. We got to push back with what people are actually experiencing on the ground, because otherwise it's a disingenuous argument. So that said, I hope y'all have a good night. I will see y'all tomorrow with more of the Black Masculinist Daily News. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.